The story kicks off with a map of Arcadia, a place that's going to be important later. Then we see Trevania, a continent where everyone supposedly gets along. Yeah, sure they do. Suddenly, the orcs unite out of nowhere and just steamroll the entire continent. Humans, getting the worst of it, finally fight back in a massive racial war. This war hero Crossan shows up with his own mana technique to train knights. But you know how these stories go? The peace didn't last long at all. The jealous nobles and priests couldn't stand seeing a hero with actual power. So these clowns make the brilliant decision to exile their only hero to Arcadia. And what happens next? A damn dragon war breaks out. You can't make this up. Humanity's forces were crippled because Crossan took all the real ones with him. So once again, the humans of Trevania are on the brink of total annihilation. In desperation, they summon a warrior from another dimension to replace the hero they kicked out. This new guy, Demon, looks way more brutal than the last one. And this dude actually slays the dragon, single-handedly winning them the war. Demon, the new hero, stands victorious, looking like a total edgelord. But the narrator reminds us that humans are idiots who never learn from their mistakes. We cut to the present day in some random rainy forest in Trevania. A dead knight is slumped over in the mud, setting a real cheerful mood. A crow is just chilling with a dude's eyeball in its beak. Gnarly. The crow flies off, giving us a nice view of a creepy, twisted tree. Elsewhere, some knights in green are getting wrecked by what look like werewolves. A knight with a ponytail is in the thick of it, trying to hold his own. Some mysterious figure in a cloak blasts away an enemy with green magic. The Ponytail Knights unit is the Royal Guard, and they're looking for a missing princess. A blonde knight yells for the Ponytail Knight, Kuslan, to check something out. Kuslan looks over, and my man is clearly not having a good day. The whole squad pulls up to a scene of absolute carnage and wreckage. Kuslan is completely stunned, asking what the hell happened here. The blonde knight reports the princess is gone, but the area is full of weird magic. An older knight in a helmet questions if this was even a battle. This helmeted knight floats up to get a better view of the disaster zone. He says this magic is from Arcadia, where they exiled their first hero, Crossan. Kuslan is shook, realizing the connection to the exiled hero's territory. The helmeted knight notes there are no signs of a fight, just a one-sided slaughter. We see a flash of some huge beast moving at insane speeds through the forest. The knight concludes this wasn't a battle, it was just a straight-up hunt. Kuslan and the blonde knight are trying to process that this was a hunt. The helmeted knight brings up the princess's kidnapping as the starting point. Turns out some duke's bitter son kidnapped the princess to start some drama. Kuslan remembers the kidnapper even teamed up with an enemy nation for this stunt. He can't believe someone could hunt down that entire combined force of knights. The helmeted knight grimly states that it's not entirely impossible for someone that strong. The scene shifts to a full moon, setting the stage for the monster reveal. A massive beast roars, having been provoked by the intruders in its territory. We see a close-up of the princess's blood-splattered face. She's seen some shit. The princess is crawling on the ground, beaten and terrified in a dark cave. She looks up at a hulking monster, one of Trevania's most feared creatures. The monster lets out a guttural roar, drool flying from its mouth. It's a damn ogre, and the terrified princess is trapped in its lair. The massive bearded ogre glares down, looking ready to finish the hunt. Kuslan grits his teeth, remembering the ogre's reputation for never leaving survivors. The helmeted knight tells the blonde knight their summoning magic was cut off again. The blonde knight completely loses hope, saying they're screwed without reinforcements. Kuslan covers his face in frustration, realizing how utterly boned they are. Kuslan has a sudden thought, questioning why the ogre would leave the princess alive. The massive ogre just growls, drooling and looking absolutely menacing in its lair. Kuslan's internal monologue questions why the massacre site wasn't an instant slaughter. The ogre looms over the terrified princess, who is just sitting there helpless. The princess Leonia looks up with a bloodied face and begs for her life. We get a dramatic name drop confirming the hostage is Princess Leonia. The scene cuts to a crow flying over a forest at sunset. You know that means trouble. We see a couple of burly dudes with huge backpacks trekking through the woods. A trading caravan is making its way through a dangerous-looking forest at dusk. The merchant leader, Feron, whines about getting lost on such a dangerous path. A mysterious hooded man with a beard gives the merchant some serious side-eye. One of the hired guards asks Feron if this is his first time taking this route. The hooded man says he would have hired 10 more guards if he knew it was this bad. Feron nervously denies it's his first time trying to save face. He's a terrible liar. He tries to cover his ass by saying the terrain must have changed in 5 years. The hooded man stares silently, clearly not buying a single word of that crap. The chained knight, Tylok, asks the hooded man, Baxter if the terrain was altered on purpose. Baxter sharply tells T-Lock to shut it, looking like he knows something is wrong. Baxter suddenly draws his sword and launches himself into an unseen fight. A gnoll gets its jaw completely shattered by a brutal punch from one of the guards. Baxter realizes they're fighting gnolls in orc armor and that they've walked into a trap. Feron panics, screaming for everyone to stick together or they'll be eaten alive. Baxter and his 3 guards form a defensive circle, ready to throw down. T-Lock asks how many enemies there are as countless glowing eyes appear in the dark. Baxter tells him not to bother counting and just get ready because they're attacking. A whole pack of armored gnolls charges straight at the surrounded guards. The guards are immediately swarmed, and the fight turns into a chaotic bloodbath. One of the guards desperately blocks a gnoll's attack with his shield. The chained knight, T-Lock, goes berserk, stabbing a gnoll and screaming at it to die. Another guard gets his helmet caved in by a brutal blow from a gnoll's mace. T-Lock gets dogpiled and repeatedly stabbed by multiple gnolls, screaming in agony. Feron watches the slaughter, terrified that even for monsters, this is too brutal. T-Lock, now covered in blood with glowing red eyes, tells the merchant to shut his mouth. Feron and his crew immediately shut up, scared absolutely shitless by the berserker knight. T-Lock tells his wounded buddy to hang on so he can collect his full payment later. Baxter, the leader, says the main ambush is over but warns them to stay sharp. Some unseen monster starts cackling like a complete psycho from the shadows. Feron loses his mind again, pointing frantically at a new threat in the distance. A giant-ass troll emerges from the woods and T-Lock can't believe their awful luck. The troll roars, showing off a mouth full of nasty, jagged, drool-covered teeth. The remaining guards stare up at the troll, wondering what they did to deserve this. One of the guards clenches his fist, probably realizing he's about to die. The troll effortlessly rips a massive boulder from the ground to use as a weapon. The troll yeets the giant rock right at the group, forcing them to scatter for their lives. The boulder crashes down, completely obliterating the ground where the guards just were. Feron screams that they're all dead if they bunch up, totally contradicting his earlier advice. Feron the merchant is already crying, screaming that they're all gonna die. At least he's consistent. Baxter, the guard captain, grits his teeth, looking ready to fight the damn troll himself. Baxter realizes the troll is working with the gnolls, meaning this whole ambush was coordinated. The troll scans the area, looking for another giant rock to yeet at them. Baxter wonders if this is some kind of trained war machine, not just a random monster. We get a full shot of the troll under the moon, looking like a roided-out nightmare. The remaining guards face the troll while T-Lock yells at Feron to not die before he pays them. Baxter starts barking orders, telling T-Lock to play bait and lead the troll away. T-Lock completely loses his shit, calling Baxter insane but running to do it anyway. Baxter tells T-Lock he has a plan that T-Lock already knows, which doesn't sound reassuring at all. The plan is to run between the troll's legs. They've done this before? What kind of life do these guys live? The troll just stands there, looking menacingly dumb with its glowing red eyes. Baxter and T-Lock charge straight at the monster, with T-Lock cursing that he hated this plan the first time. Baxter is in a full sprint, looking way too focused for such a stupidly dangerous maneuver. The troll looks down, but it seems completely distracted by something else. A close-up on the troll's eyes shows it's not even looking at the charging mercs. The troll is staring up at the sky, completely ignoring the 2 guys about to run under it. Some shadowy figure just flies across the full moon like a goddamn superhero. A new character with a glowing blue eye appears out of nowhere in midair. This new guy smashes into the ground right next to the troll with a massive impact. The newcomer lands a devastating punch on the troll's leg, sending out a shockwave. Baxter stops dead in his tracks, completely baffled by what the hell is going on. The troll's leg gives out, and the whole damn thing starts to collapse. T-Lock runs up to Baxter, demanding to know how he made the giant fall. He gives him way too much credit. The mysterious figure stands up from the impact, surrounded by a blue aura. We get a close-up of the new guy's face, long black hair, glowing eyes, and a serious expression. The newcomer is revealed to be a ridiculously jacked dude who just one-shotted a troll's leg. He walks forward out of the dust looking like an absolute unit. Baxter and T-Lock just stare in stunned silence at the guy who just stole their thunder. The new guy walks right past the fallen troll toward the remaining gnolls. A dead gnoll is shown on the ground with its head completely caved in. The mysterious figure picks up the dead gnoll by its mangled head. And then he just starts eating the gnoll's brains. Okay, this dude is not the hero. Baxter is sweating, asking his crew what that thing is. A valid question at this point. The narration explains this is a creature you'd never see in a city. No kidding. The creature continues to munch on the gnoll skull, looking completely feral. A crow with glowing eyes watches from a tree as the narration calls this thing the forest's most fearsome monster. The narrator ominously states that anyone who encounters it never returns alive. The creature's boots take a heavy step forward, approaching the terrified group. The guards finally identify the creature as an ogre, which is a hell of a plot twist. A close-up of the ogre's glowing blue eye reveals a surprising amount of intelligence. Baxter repeats the word ogre in utter disbelief, probably remembering the princess's kidnapper. The ogre's blood-soaked hand clenches, as the narration says their numbers are few. The ogre faces Baxter, hyped up as a monster with unmatched strength, magic, and cunning. Feron's group points from a distance, wondering why their mercenary is just standing there frozen. Baxter is internally panicking, trying to figure out if they can even run away from this thing. He concludes that running is useless because they'll just be hunted down for sport. The ogre looks down at the group with a surprisingly calm and thoughtful expression. He closes his eyes for a moment, looking almost pained or weary. The ogre tells the group he'll guide them from here on out. This is not the monster they were expecting. The ogre tells them not to worry, trying to sound reassuring while looking like a nightmare. He stands before Baxter and Tylok, who are still trying to figure out what just happened. Feron is having a full-blown panic attack in the back, screaming about the ogre. The ogre introduces himself as Leon and reveals he's a human ogre half-blood. We get a location change to southeast Truvania, so we're deep in the sticks now. Someone is checking a map, showing the caravan's planned route through the forest. The map leads to the Kingdom of Arnia, a fortified city on the edge of a plain. The story specifies this place is located in a remote forest. No shit, Sherlock. The group arrives at Feron village, which is surrounded by a massive wooden wall. A young guard on the watchtower hears them approaching and looks concerned. Leon looks up at the village wall looking like he's home. The guard on duty spots the absolute unit that is Leon walking out of the darkness. The guard understandably freaks out a little, demanding to know who's there. Leon leads the battered caravan to the front gate of the village. Feron is already complaining about his bones while Tylok is still pissed about the fight. Baxter, the hooded leader, stays silent and observant, probably smelling trouble. One of the merchants looks up at the wall, asking if it's a monster barrier. The guard Daryl recognizes Leon and asks who the hell he brought with him. Leon explains he found a trading company that was supposed to do business with the village. Baxter just watches from the background, letting the giant do the talking for now. Daryl is suspicious, saying they weren't expecting anyone this late and might be bandits. Feron loses his shit, screaming that they got lost because the village chief's directions sucked. Tylok and another merc just laugh, calling out Feron for being a total rookie. Daryl the guard holds his ground, saying they have to leave if they can't prove their identity. Feron throws a fit, demanding to see the village chief like the world's worst Karen. Leon scratches his head, realizing this is getting more complicated than it needs to be. Leon vouches for them, saying he heard them in trouble and the path was interfered with. Daryl questions Leon about hearing urgent voices from the forest. Leon promises to personally handle any problems, looking like he could level the whole town. The group is finally led inside, with Baxter still looking wary as hell. We get a nice establishing shot of Feron village, a small settlement inside the walls. An overhead view shows the village is pretty rustic and isolated. The village even has a stone church, which seems a bit fancy for this place. Inside the village hall, someone slams down an empty mug. Time for a debrief. Tylok sits brooding at a table, probably wondering when he's getting paid for this mess. The village chief laughs his ass off at Leon's promise to deal with any trouble. A villager tells the chief to chill out before he gives the merchants a heart attack. The same villager praises Leon for saving the caravan, calling it a good job. Baxter stays hooded and silent, just taking in the scene and judging everyone. Baxter finally speaks, pointing out the excessive barriers surrounding the entire village. The chief admits monsters are common, but Baxter says the defenses are overkill. Baxter looks between Leon and the chief, hoping his gut feeling is wrong. Baxter cuts to the chase and asks the village chief if they're preparing for war. The chief's dead silence and closed eyes is basically a yes. Tylok listens from the side, probably realizing this gig just got way more dangerous. The villager asks what war means, and you can see Leon is not happy about this topic. Baxter's eyes narrow. He clearly knows a thing or two about war himself. The village chief opens his eyes, looking like he's seen way too much conflict. The chief agrees war is terrible, and correctly guesses the mercs are war-affiliated. He flashes back to the old days, escaping the orcs who treated humans like cattle. Here we go again. The chief flashes back to a massive army of orcs with glowing red eyes. Yeah, that'll give you PTSD. Leon tells Baxter that modern wars are just about everyone losing in the end. Leon thinks to himself that the whole concept of war is seriously messed up. The village chief says he hopes his village never has to go through that again. The chief claims the village's intense defenses are just everyone's wishes piled up. Tylok slams his mug on the table, clearly not buying that sentimental bullshit. Everyone in the room jumps, startled by Tylok's sudden outburst. Tylok calls the chief out, saying he's just dressing up a war machine with a nice story. Leon looks at Baxter, wondering if maybe the barriers are just simple defenses after all. Leon questions if a monster like him can ever truly be understood with just words. Tylok is still reeling from seeing Leon one-punch a troll, wondering if that's normal here. The whole room is tense with the mercs on one side and Leon's crew on the other. Tylok gets in Leon's face, demanding proof that he isn't just some secret weapon. One of the villagers calls Tylok's accusation harsh, trying to calm things down. Baxter finally steps in, telling his boy Tylok that he's taking it way too far. Leon looks genuinely hurt by the accusation, like he's heard it all before. Leon just shakes his head sadly, looking completely defeated by their suspicion. Leon tells Baxter he gets why it's hard for them to accept him. Tylok is still giving him the death glare, completely unconvinced by the sad act. Leon walks toward Tylok, saying he needs to prove he's not a threat to stop rumors. Leon offers to introduce Tylok to his mother, the ultimate I'm harmless card. The scene cuts to a full moon over the forest, because nothing good happens in the daytime. The group walks through tall grass outside the village walls at night. They arrive at a secluded cabin on a hill, which is definitely not creepy at all. Inside, a woman's hand with a green ring rests on a book by candlelight. We see a blonde woman from behind, working in a cozy, well-stocked kitchen. The camera focuses on fresh bread and cheese, trying to sell the wholesome home vibe. Tylok asks about a weird smell, and Leon casually says it's his piss to repel monsters. The blonde woman turns her head, having heard the group approaching her cabin. The heavy wooden door to the cabin creaks open. Leon enters and calls for his mother, with Tylok nervously peeking in behind him. Baxter peeks in too, explaining they got held up by some business in the village. Tylok is hiding behind the doorframe, blushing like an idiot. My man saw a pretty lady. Tylok is completely flustered, asking if she's the one they came to see. Leon's very human and very attractive mother calmly tells them to come in and sit. We jump into a flashback to Feron village 15 years ago. Here we go. A younger village chief and other villagers are running for their lives in panic. The villagers are all crowded on the watchtower, staring at an unseen threat. The young chief demands to know what the hell is going on outside the barrier. A guard fumbles with his crossbow, admitting they have no idea what's happening. The guards tell the chief he needs to see this for himself. It's never good news. The chief looks over the wall and is immediately struck with absolute terror. A massive demonic beast with glowing red eyes stands over a dead body. The chief's eyes are wide with horror, realizing they are completely screwed. A close-up on the monster's glowing red eyes shows it's ready for a massacre. A villager identifies the hulking armored monster as an ogre. This looks familiar. The other villagers look on, absolutely terrified and powerless. The chief screams for everyone to lower their weapons and not provoke the beast. The chief recognizes the monster's fangs from a book he's read. In another flashback, a scholar identifies the creature as Truvania's legendary forest wolf. The monster gets a dramatic name drop: Lobo, the Central Continent Slaughterer. The young chief is losing his mind, saying they need siege weapons for this thing. A guard tells the chief that the monster's power isn't the weirdest part of this. The guard says the monster's behavior is completely off, and they've been watching it. Lobo has been standing over a body for hours without moving. That's not normal. The chief is completely baffled, asking what the hell he means by that. The guard questions if the monster has a purpose beyond just hunting them down. The villagers just stare from the wall, trying to figure out what's happening. Lobo the ogre just stands there, looking down with its glowing red eyes. The young chief is still trying to process this bizarre situation. A close-up on Lobo's eyes shows it's just staring intently at something. The monster is standing over the body of a woman it presumably killed. We see the dead woman lying face down on the ground. Lobo remains completely still, just watching the body. This is getting creepy. The monster suddenly looks up, its gaze fixed on the village wall. The villagers on the wall are confused by its sudden attention. Lobo picks up the woman's body like it's nothing. And then the monster just yeets the body clean over the massive wooden wall. The villagers freak out, completely stunned by what just happened. The woman's body lands with a thud inside the village. The chief and his men are speechless, staring at the body. The woman's hands twitch. Holy shit, she's still alive. The villagers realize the woman is alive and point her out. The flashback ends, cutting back to Tylock and Baxter entering the cabin. Back in the present, Leon's mother sits calmly with a book. Leon is already chowing down, psyched about his favorite cheese and ham. Tylock is still blushing like a moron while Baxter just watches silently. Leon's mother apologizes for the lack of preparation, throwing some shade at her son. Leon and his mom sit on a bench while the mercs stand awkwardly. Leon's mom tells him she'll discipline him later for bringing guests unannounced. She cuts to the chase, asking the mercs what their business is here. Tylock is still just staring at her, completely lost in the sauce. Baxter calls out her accent, noting that it sounds like she's a noble. He realizes her speech pattern is something you'd only hear from the royal bloodline. Leon's mother just sits there cutting cheese, completely unfazed by the accusation. Tylock gets pissed, saying the sketchy villagers and this noble lady are a perfect match. Leon's mother closes her eyes, looking like she's heard this a million times. She admits their situation is unusual and that she understands their suspicion. She tells them that what they've seen with their own eyes is the truth. She apologizes for Leon's recklessness and asks what they want from her. Leon's mother faces the mercs, ready to deal with their bullshit. Baxter immediately recognizes her tone, saying it sounds like a negotiation. She agrees, saying it's the best way to communicate with a trading company. Tylock gets agitated, asking Baxter if he's seriously going to negotiate with her. Tylock loses his patience, complaining that she's dodging the question. Baxter tries to calm Tylock down, but Tylock shoves him off, completely fed up. Tylock demands to know why a noblewoman is hiding in the middle of nowhere. He screams at her, asking why she would give birth to a monster like Leon. Leon's mother calmly calls his words harsh, which only pisses Tylock off more. Tylock calls her shameless for hiding out here instead of facing the world's problems. Tylock flashes back to a brutal war against an army of demonic knights. He remembers watching his comrades get cut down like nothing. The flashback shows the war was so intense it pushed into the demon realm. We see a boot stomping on a field of skulls. Yeah, he's seen some shit. A younger Tylock is shown panting, clearly traumatized by the battle. He recalls the terrible things nations did just to steal a bit of land. A bloodthirsty demon soldier grins, embodying the horrors of war for him. Tylock glares at Leon, calling him a disgusting half-blood war creature. Baxter screams Tylock's name, trying to get his boy to stand down. Tylock ignores him, demanding to know if this is what the village is hiding. He asks Leon's mom what resentment drove her to have a child with a monster. Leon gets pissed, telling his mom she doesn't have to answer his bullshit. Tylock gets right in Leon's face, his eyes glowing with pure hatred. He accuses Leon's mother of just playing around with other races for fun. Leon's eye transforms into a reptilian slit. My man is about to snap. Leon's mother slams the table and screams, "No!" completely losing her composure. She unleashes a slap so hard it sends Tylock flying across the entire room. Tylock is completely airborne, his face red from the sheer force of the impact. He gets launched clean through the wooden wall of the cabin. Damn, lady. The cabin wall explodes outward from the force of Tylock's body. A cloud of dust and splinters marks where Tylock was just yeeted. Tylock's bloodied hand is shown as he lies in the wreckage, completely stunned. Leon's mother collapses to the floor, exhausted by her sudden outburst. Leon goes full monster mode, surrounded by a dark aura and looking feral. He smashes through the broken wall, chasing after Tylock in a blind rage. The cabin is left in ruins as Leon pursues Tylock into the night. Leon is panting heavily, completely lost in his berserker rage. He looks back toward the cabin, his eyes glowing with fury. Leon lets out a blood-curdling scream, having lost all control. Baxter suddenly appears, holding a struggling Tylock down with a glowing blue sword. Baxter glares with an intensity we haven't seen before. He was hiding his power level. Leon, still in his rage, looks up at Baxter, confused by the sudden intervention. He seems to recognize the blue energy coming from Baxter's sword. Leon stands protectively over his collapsed mother, looking back at the mercs. His mother reaches out, weakly telling her son to calm down. Leon looks down at his mother, and his rage begins to subside slightly. Baxter's voice snaps Leon's attention, his glowing blue eye locking on the merc. Baxter stands in the doorway, looking like a completely different, more dangerous person. He draws his glowing sword, pointing it past Leon's mother. Leon's eye widens in terror, thinking his mother is the target. He begs Baxter not to hurt her, his voice filled with desperation. Baxter tells him not to misunderstand, clarifying his mother isn't the target. Baxter's eyes are now glowing with the same blue energy as his sword. He says the sword is for Leon, calling him the one who doesn't look human. Leon's mother screams his name, terrified of what's about to happen. Baxter claims he avoided major injuries to calm Leon down. He's about to be proven wrong. Baxter stands over Leon's mom, having just slashed Leon with his sword. Leon's arm is shown with a glowing red mark, but he's still standing and pissed. Baxter grits his teeth, realizing his attack didn't have the intended effect. He's in shock, admitting his sword strike didn't even penetrate Leon's skin. Baxter realizes his sword can't even scratch Leon's skin because of that ogre blood. Leon, still seeing red, lunges at Baxter to continue the beatdown. Baxter panics, realizing Leon's rampage is heading right for his collapsed mother. Leon throws a wild punch, but Baxter manages to block it with his forearm. Baxter uses Leon's momentum to yeet the giant half-ogre out of the wrecked cabin. The sheer force of the throw sends Baxter flying backward through the air. Baxter lands outside looking a little beat up but still ready for round 2. Leon launches himself into the sky, silhouetted against the moon like a damned demon. He comes crashing down like a meteor right where Baxter was standing. The impact creates a massive crater, blowing dust and debris everywhere. Leon rises from the crater, his eyes glowing pure red with absolute rage. We get a close-up on his feral eye. Yeah, there's nobody home right now. Baxter stands his ground, sword at the ready, facing the out-of-control monster. Baxter notes that even while berserk, Leon was smart enough to move the fight outside. Leon lets out a deafening roar and charges forward like a freight train. Baxter braces himself as Leon closes the distance for another devastating attack. Baxter dodges with surprising speed and counters with a slash of his own. The blue energy from his sword flashes as he lands a clean hit on Leon. Baxter calls him out, asking if he even considered his mom was in the line of fire. Leon just grins like a psycho, completely ignoring the question and lunging again. Baxter easily sidesteps the attack, showing off some serious footwork. A close-up on Leon's eye shows he's tracking Baxter's every move. Baxter appears behind Leon, but the half-ogre is already turning to counter. Baxter is completely stunned, realizing Leon just copied his exact movement technique. Leon's massive hand reaches for Baxter's head, having perfectly predicted his move. A sudden red energy blast erupts from the side, interrupting the fight. Tilok is on the ground, looking up in shock at whatever just happened. He curses Baxter's name, still pissed off and recovering from that super slap. Tilok is suddenly hanging upside down, caught in some kind of magical restraint. Leon's mother stands over Tilok, revealing she was the one who cast the spell. Her face is covered in glowing markings, showing she's a magic user too. A massive explosion of blue energy erupts, separating Leon and Baxter. The two fighters are blown back, finally giving them a moment to breathe. Leon looks at his hands, the red glow in his eyes finally fading away. Baxter catches his breath, realizing the fight is finally over. Baxter admits Leon learned his moves just by watching and planned a perfect counter. Leon's eyes are back to their normal blue, showing he's regained his senses. Baxter reveals a glowing green necklace, saying it's the only reason Leon survived. He holds up the artifact, impressed that it can control a rampaging ogre. A flashback shows Leon's mom placing the same necklace on a younger, berserk Leon. Leon looks down with his fangs out, realizing he completely lost control again. Leon's mom explains that her family, Kincaid, had to deal with half-bloods as weapons. Baxter formally apologizes, admitting he was wrong about Leon being a simple monster. He offers the necklace back, saying Leon is clearly well-controlled enough for society. Leon looks up with wide eyes as his mother calls his name gently. His eyes are filled with tears, completely overwhelmed with emotion and relief. His mother holds her arms out, offering him comfort after his rampage. She tells him to come inside and rest, her voice calm and reassuring. Leon, looking like a giant lost kid, walks toward his mother for a hug. The massive half-ogre collapses into his mother's embrace, finally safe. Leon cries his eyes out, calling for his mother like the giant, traumatized kid he is. The wrecked cabin sits under the moonlight, with magical particles floating around the scene. We get a close-up of the splintered wood, a nice reminder of the previous night's chaos. Tilok is passed out cold in the grass, looking like he got hit by a freight train. He wakes up gritting his teeth, probably realizing he got slapped into another dimension. Tilok curses the whole situation as a crow flies ominously past the full moon. The next morning, crows fly over the mountains, signaling a new day of bullshit. The cabin is shown in the daylight, looking surprisingly peaceful after the demolition derby. Leon's mom is already up and cooking, completely unfazed by her house being half destroyed. She's whipping up a hearty stew because nothing says, "Sorry my son raged," like a good meal. Leon's mother serves the food, looking like a domestic goddess despite the previous night's drama. A close-up on the meal shows she's trying to make peace with a full breakfast spread. She presents a massive table of food, ready to feed the mercs she just beat up. We see a scar on her face, hinting that she's seen her own share of fights. Later, she's seen calmly reading a book, a perfect picture of noble composure. The sun shines through the forest, marking the start of their journey back to civilization. Lyon is back in the woods, looking over his shoulder with a newfound confidence. He stands alone with his axe, looking like he's finally processed the whole ordeal. Lyon now leads the caravan, with Feron already complaining about the return trip. Baxter questions their new route, ever the strategist and still a little suspicious. Lyon admits it's a detour for reasons other than just avoiding monsters. He grips his axe tightly, showing he's ready for whatever the forest throws at them. Lyon parts the bushes, saying the forest is communicating with him. Ogre senses tingling. He looks off into the distance, sensing something the others can't. A bright light shines down as Lyon stands alert, confirming he's not just paranoid. Lyon assures the group they'll be safe once they leave the forest. "Yeah, sure, buddy." One of the merchants scoffs from the back, thinking Lyon is just being overly cautious. The sun flares again through the trees, maybe hinting at some kind of magical presence. The narrator confirms they're on the return route near the Helplane border. Tylock is being carried on a stretcher, getting roasted for picking a fight with an ogre. One of the merchants brushes it off, just happy they lightened their cargo load. Tylock grits his teeth, still focused on getting paid despite his near-death experience. The group continues their trek through the dense forest undergrowth. Baxter calls out to Lyon, who raises his axe in response without missing a step. Lyon turns around with a blade of grass in his mouth, looking totally relaxed now. He cheerfully calls Baxter uncle, showing they've bonded after trying to kill each other. Baxter asks Lyon a question, his tone suggesting a newfound grudging respect. Lyon says he can smell the city, using his ogre senses to navigate the rough terrain. Feron breathes a sigh of relief in the background, desperate to get back to civilization. Baxter shows concern for Lyon, mentioning he stayed up all night fixing the cabin wall. Lyon says he was inspired by Baxter's adventure stories on the way. Baxter notes it's weird Lyon is so sheltered, and Lyon blames his mom and the village. A merchant explains they were just trying to protect a naive kid from the harsh world. Lyon geeks out over Feron's heroic tales about haggling being the key to success. He asks if he'd be good at it, but Baxter just shuts down his enthusiasm immediately. Baxter gets serious, asking if Lyon is being kept in the village against his will. Lyon explains that staying is his own choice, despite his curiosity about the outside world. He reflects that the village's massive barriers might actually be there to protect him. Lyon concludes the village is the only place that truly accepts a half-ogre like him. Baxter listens to Lyon's reasoning with a thoughtful, almost somber expression. Lyon's narration shows a grave marker, hinting at the heavy sacrifices made for the village. He continues, explaining his mother lives all alone in that creepy cabin in the woods. Lyon drops the bomb that giving birth to him, a half-ogre, left his mother crippled. He says the villagers told him she was a noble, but she hid her disability from him. Lyon concludes he can't leave because his mom gave up everything. Baxter just takes it in. A merchant asks about his baby diet of raw meat, making Feron gag in the background. Baxter changes the subject, getting back to business about their coincidental first meeting. Baxter asks Lyon directly if he was ordered to watch their route, smelling a complete setup. Feron looks shocked, finally realizing he might have been a pawn in a bigger game. Lyon just gives a goofy, unconvincing smile, proving he's as bad a liar as Feron. He stammers about it being a coincidence, but Baxter immediately calls him on his bullshit. Feron tries to smooth things over, just happy he didn't end up as null food. He adds that a secret mission would be a problem, putting the pressure back on Lyon. Lyon quickly denies it's a war, trying to downplay the situation like a guilty kid. He explains the forest was infested with orc bandits, which is why it was so dangerous. A flashback shows an orc caravan at night, confirming they were an organized threat. Another flashback shows orcs slaughtering merchants, which was crippling the village's trade. Baxter connects the dots, realizing Lyon was using his ogre piss to mark territory. Lyon says the orc bandits suddenly vanished, which is never, ever a good sign. He speculates the village's defenses scared them off, but he doesn't sound convinced. Lyon admits his presence as a forest ogre was probably the real reason they bailed. Baxter asks if saving them was just to protect the village's reputation, still suspicious. Lyon denies it, but now even Feron is confused about the real motive here. Lyon reveals the orcs are now taming gnolls and trolls, confirming the ambush was planned. He adds the orcs were altering the forest, which is why Feron's dumbass got lost. Leon says his ogre senses have been warning him that the forest is in serious trouble. He tries to play it cool, saying he'll deal with any problems that pop up. Baxter and Feron listen, with Baxter still looking like he doesn't trust this situation at all. The group finally spots the walled city of Leaden in the distance, their destination. Leon points out the city, officially ending his escort duty for the battered caravan. Baxter turns to Leon, ready to part ways with their giant, emotionally complicated savior. Baxter gives a formal thank you, calling their meeting a good connection. Feron wishes Leon's dream of leaving the village and seeing the world comes true. Leon looks down, admitting he hopes an opportunity to leave will come eventually. Feron suggests Leon join a circus that accepts different races. What a career change. Leon is shocked Feron knows about this stuff and Feron gets all defensive about it. Leon looks at his hand, actually considering running away to join the damn circus. Leon waves goodbye as the caravan and a stretcher-bound Tylock finally enter the city. He watches them go, looking like a kid who wants to follow but knows he can't. A close-up shows Leon's wistful expression as he's left alone at the forest's edge. He turns back to the woods, suddenly worried if the village will be okay without him. The narration confirms his sudden anxiety about the village's safety. The foreshadowing is thick. Leon's eyes glow white as his ogre senses go into overdrive. Something is very wrong. He stares into the dark woods, sensing an immediate and powerful threat nearby. Leon's face hardens as he prepares to head back into the danger zone he just left. He gets into a runner's stance, about to bolt back toward his village. A sudden flash of blue energy slashes through the woods. He's definitely not alone. The scene jumps to a flashback 8 years ago, showing the village in simpler times. A much younger, kid version of Leon looks up with wide, innocent eyes. A younger village chief sits with Kid Leon by the pig pen, asking him how old he is. Kid Leon, age 5, looks up with his little fangs out, looking like a feral puppy. The younger village chief grabs Kid Leon's head, joking that he's way too big for his age. We see Leon's mom in the past looking like a butcher as she chops up pig carcasses. The chief narrates that Leon's mom, Leonia, started raising him while he watches pigs. The chief gives Kid Leon a head pat, and the little guy looks like he's enjoying it. The chief gets all sentimental, saying Leon reminds him of his own rough childhood. In another flashback, the chief as a kid is passed out in the woods after nobles wrecked his life. The sun shines through the trees, giving us that classic hope is on the way shot. The young chief hides behind a tree, looking like a scared, dirty orphan. He peeks out from his hiding spot and sees the walled village for the first time. The chief narrates he was only 10 when he stumbled upon this place, looking like a mess. Back in the main flashback, Kid Leon's stomach growls while the chief is holding him. The chief tells Leon this village is the only place that would ever accept him and his mom. He explains it's because everyone there is a refugee who's been through some serious shit. The chief and Kid Leon sit on a rock, sharing a quiet moment overlooking their home. The flashback ends, cutting to a blood-red sunset that screams, "Something bad is happening." Leon looks up at the sky, his ogre senses telling him this ain't a normal sunset. The sky over the village is on fire, confirming his gut feeling was dead on. He scans the woods, realizing the eerie silence means the monsters are gone. That's worse. Leon has a panic attack, screaming for his mother as he realizes the danger is near her cabin. His fangs start growing out. My man is about to lose control again. We see his mom's cabin as magical energy swirls around it, hinting she's in deep trouble. Leon breathes a sigh of relief, thinking the danger hasn't reached her yet. He's so naive. His eyes widen in terror as he realizes what's actually happening around him. The entire forest is on fire and he's standing right in the middle of it. Leon looks around frantically as the flames close in on him from all sides. He looks up, completely baffled and trying to figure out what the hell is going on. A close-up shows the burning logs, really driving home the forest fire theme. Leon realizes the fire was set on purpose to mask a smell heading for the village. He decides he needs to get back to the village immediately to warn everyone. Leon's ear twitches as he hears something behind him in the burning chaos. He whips around, sensing he's not alone in this fiery hellscape. An arrow is shown stuck in the ground, confirming this is a coordinated attack. A villager, Leon, calls Uncle Nelson is slumped against a tree with an arrow in his chest. The dying man struggles to say Leon's name, his face covered in blood. Nelson looks past Leon at an unseen enemy, cursing that he's too injured to fight. Leon rushes to his side, trying to help the dying man. He begs Nelson to hold on, promising to get him back to the village for help. Nelson uses his last breath to give Leon a cryptic warning about the village. He tells Leon to keep his sanity no matter what he sees when he gets back. Oh, this is bad. Nelson's hand falls to the ground and he dies right there in the fire. Leon just kneels there, watching his friend die as the forest burns around them. He looks up from the body, his face shifting from grief to pure, unadulterated rage. Leon stands up, looking absolutely massive and ready to murder whoever did this. The creepy, glowing-eyed crow makes another appearance, watching the whole scene unfold. Leon looks up, his face a perfect picture of someone who's about to go on a rampage. We get a quick, painful flashback to the chief comforting kid Leon in happier times. Leon's eye transforms into a reptilian slit. The berserker mode is officially activated. Someone is shown running through the burning forest at high speed. Archers are lined up on the village wall, confirming the attack is already underway. The village archers line up on the wall, pointing at the enemy with deadly intent. A massive horde of orcs and trolls swarms the base of the wall. So much for overkill defenses. The orcs are already setting up ladders, trying to scale the barrier like a swarm of angry ants. The village chief is on the wall, screaming for his men to prepare to fire. A villager gives the order to shoot the trolls carrying the ladders first. At least someone has a brain. The chief and his men draw their bows, ready to defend their home against the onslaught. The chief realizes these aren't just bandits. They're a militarized force, confirming Baxter's suspicions. A scout with binoculars spots something behind the main army and starts freaking out. The orc army is shown with banners, confirming this is a full-scale invasion, not a random raid. A massive armored orc leader rides a demonic-looking warg, and he's clearly the final boss. A close-up on the warg's glowing red eyes shows this thing is pure nightmare fuel. The chief sweats, realizing he's looking at something way out of their league. The orc leader is revealed to be a scarred veteran with a nasty-looking eye patch. His one good eye glows with red energy, because of course it does. The orc leader sits on his mount, looking down on the village like it's already his. The orc army stands ready, silhouetted against the fiery sky. This is some Lord of the Rings shit. The chief notes the enemy leader is riding a tamed warg, something he's never seen before. He identifies the leader as an Uruk from the wastelands, a creature built for war. They are so screwed. The chief tells his men this is way more than a simple raid. You think? The Uruk leader casually yeets a spear over the wall with terrifying speed and accuracy. The spear impales a villager, revealing a severed head was attached to the tip. Message received. The villagers stare in horror at the head on the spear, a clear warning from the enemy. The chief screams that orc weapons are poisoned, trying to save his wounded man. The Uruk leader looks on from below, having made his point loud and clear. He gives an order to send out their ogre help. Oh great, they have their own monster. The Uruk leader grins, ready to unleash his secret weapon on the terrified villagers. The orcs continue their relentless assault, climbing the ladders to breach the walls. The villagers on the watchtower are ordered to focus their fire on the ladders. A heavily armored orc leads the charge, leaping toward the top of the wall. The chief screams for all defense units to prepare for the incoming wave. The archers get ready to fire a volley, their last line of defense against the horde. The armored orcs march forward as the chief finally gives the command to fire. A hail of arrows rains down from the sky, aimed at the charging orc army. The arrows fly through the air, a desperate attempt to thin the enemy's numbers. The Uruk leader watches the volley, mockingly impressed that the humans can shoot so well. The chief switches to a crossbow, aiming for a high-value target in the chaos. The crossbow bolt flies true, hitting an orc shaman right in the middle of the army. The shaman lies dead on the ground with a bolt through his skull. That's one hell of a shot. The chief looks on with grim satisfaction after taking out a key enemy unit. The Uruk leader glares up at the wall, pissed that his magic support just got sniped. He pulls out another spear with a severed head, ready for another round of psychological warfare. He prepares to throw the spear, aiming to send another gruesome message to the defenders. A villager finds the first spear and notices something attached to it besides the head. He pulls off a crumpled piece of paper, realizing it's a letter. The villager sees the writing isn't in the orc language, adding another layer of mystery to this attack. The orcs' ogre help is revealed to be a line of chained prisoners. They're leading captured humans forward, and they look suspiciously like the village's missing scouts. The chief and his men prepare for the next assault, unaware of the horror they're about to see. The scout with the binoculars spots the prisoners and screams in terror. The villagers realize the prisoners are their own people, the kids who went out scouting. They're being used as human shields. The chief's son, Daryl, is shown as one of the prisoners, looking absolutely terrified. The chief screams for a ceasefire, realizing the orcs are using his people as shields. The chief's eyes are wide with panic, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. The Uruk leader sits on his warg, surrounded by the captured villagers, including Daryl. The villagers on the wall recognize their own, with the chief realizing his son is down there. A villager warns the chief that the enemy is pushing the gate, forcing an impossible choice. The chief is completely frozen, gritting his teeth as he tries to process this nightmare. He finally gives an order to sally out and defend the gate. A suicide mission, basically. A squad of villagers charges out to form a defensive line in front of the main gate. The captain screams for his men to block the gate with their bodies if they have to. A villager struggles to hold a massive wooden beam in place to reinforce the gate. The captain panics, yelling that they're trapped and need to secure the gate immediately. A villager questions how they never saw this massive organized army coming. He screams that their defenses are useless because this army clearly wants something specific. The orcs bring out a massive wolf-headed battering ram. Yeah, they're screwed. The battering ram swings forward, ready to smash the village's main gate to splinters. The ram hits the gate with a massive impact, shaking the entire wall. The villagers inside are thrown back, struggling to hold the line against the sheer force. A defender grits his teeth, knowing they can't hold out much longer against this assault. A massive, long-haired ogre stands with the orcs, revealed as their secret weapon. An orc soldier comments that battlefield tactics are a whole different level of warfare. The hired ogre smirks, promising to help with their hunt as promised. The orc army continues its relentless assault, scaling the walls with ladders. The captured villagers look on in despair as their home is about to be overrun. The chief's men desperately plead with him to make a decision before it's too late. The chief is in absolute agony, unable to choose between his son and his village. Daryl calls out to his father from the battlefield, his voice filled with terror. A villager tells the chief they have no choice but to sacrifice the prisoners to save everyone. The chief is silent, his face hidden in shadow as he bears the weight of his decision. He finally admits he can't give the order to fire on his own son. The other villagers apologize to their chief, knowing what they have to do. The archers draw their bows, preparing to fire on the enemy and their own people. The Uruk leader watches from below, enjoying every second of their moral dilemma. The hired ogre grins with pure bloodlust, ready to join the slaughter. A figure suddenly leaps from the burning forest like a goddamn cannonball. It's Leon, airborne and ready to bring his massive axe down on the orc army. The Uruk leader looks up, surprised by the sudden high-speed intervention. Leon lands with a ground-shattering impact, crushing a troll beneath him. The Uruk leader grins, welcoming the ogre whelp to the party. A massive shockwave erupts from Leon's landing, blowing dust and debris everywhere. The blast sends orcs flying in every direction, clearing a circle of death around him. The archers on the wall are completely stunned, having no idea what just happened. Leon becomes a whirlwind of destruction, his axe cutting through orcs like butter. The chief and his men look down from the wall, finally recognizing their boy Leon. The Uruk leader and his elite guard watch Leon's rampage with cold calculation. An orc confirms that their prey has taken the bait, just as they planned. The Uruk leader smirks, asking what Leon will do now that he's in their trap. Daryl looks back at the Uruk leader, who stands right behind him. The Uruk leader executes the chief's son with a single brutal swing of his weapon. Leon continues his bloody rampage, completely unaware his friend was just murdered. Leon finally sees what happened, his berserker rage freezing as he whispers Daryl's name. The hired ogre just stands there with a bloody grin, clearly enjoying the absolute chaos. Leon, surrounded by bodies, locks eyes with the hired ogre, his rage shifting to a new target. A close-up on Leon's face shows the exact moment grief turns into pure, murderous intent. We get a brutal shot of Daryl's headless body, confirming the Uruk leader wasn't bluffing. Leon stands over his friend's corpse, having a stare-down with the Uruk leader on his warg. The hired ogre just watches the drama unfold, still smirking like the world's biggest asshole. Leon lets out a primal roar, his focus now entirely on the other ogre in the field. The hired ogre charges forward with his weapon, finally ready to get his hands dirty. Leon meets the charge head-on, swinging his axe as the two monsters are about to clash. The hired ogre's red eye glows as he grins, completely confident he's about to win this. Leon brings his axe down in a massive overhead swing, channeling all his rage into the blow. The hired ogre's arm gets sliced open, and for the first time he looks genuinely surprised. The hired ogre recognizes Leon's move as a knight's technique, realizing he's not just a brute. Leon presses his advantage, unleashing a flurry of attacks on the now panicked ogre. Leon's eyes are glowing pure white. He's completely lost in the sauce right now. The two ogres trade blows, their weapons clashing with enough force to shake the ground. Leon winds up for another devastating swing, moving with terrifying speed and precision. The hired ogre stands over a dead orc, looking back at Leon with a newfound respect. His blade drips with blood as he prepares for the next round of this monster mash. Lyon is covered in cuts, but he's still standing, looking like he's just getting warmed up. The hired ogre admits his full-power counterattack wasn't even enough to cut Lyon in half. Lyon's eyes are a mix of human blue and ogre reptilian, showing his internal struggle. The hired ogre taunts Lyon, asking if this is his first time feeling real pain. He completely loses his shit, screaming at Lyon about what an ogre is supposed to be. Lyon lunges forward, ignoring the trash talk and going straight for the kill. Lyon lands a brutal kick, sending the hired ogre flying backward through the air. The hired ogre just laughs maniacally while being yeeted. This dude is unhinged. Lyon's glowing red eye tracks his target through the darkness, ready to finish him. Lyon brings his fist down like a meteor, aiming to crush the hired ogre completely. The punch connects, sending the hired ogre crashing into the ground with a massive impact. Lyon stands over his opponent, who admits he expected this level of power from him. The hired ogre grips his weapon, showing he's not out of this fight just yet. Lyon pants heavily, the berserker state clearly draining his stamina fast. The hired ogre admits Lyon's strength and talent are far beyond his own. Orcs in the background prepare a massive spiked chain, revealing their real plan. The chain whips out and wraps around Lyon's shoulder, digging into his flesh. Lyon looks down in shock, realizing he just walked right into a trap. The chain is pulled taut, creating a massive shockwave as the trap is sprung. Lyon watches as more chains fly toward him, finally understanding the setup. Orcs pull the chains from all directions, successfully restraining the enraged half-ogre. Lyon lets out a furious roar, struggling against the spiked chains digging into his body. The hired ogre explains this trap is strong enough to subdue trolls. They came prepared. Lyon hisses like a cornered animal, still fighting against the impossible odds. The hired ogre taunts him, promising that the pain is only just beginning. He makes a hand signal, ordering the orcs to begin the next phase of their plan. A surviving villager prisoner looks up from the ground, watching the scene in horror. The villager's face is a mask of pure terror as he realizes what's happening. He sees the captured Lyon and calls out his name, his last hope now in chains. The hired ogre stands with the remaining prisoners, using them as human shields once again. The hired ogre taunts a terrified villager, saying Lyon is different from normal ogres. The hired ogre looms over the villager, who is on the ground begging for his life. A close-up on Lyon's face shows his eyes glowing white, completely lost in his rage. The hired ogre grins, his red eye glowing as he enjoys the psychological torture. The villager weakly calls out Lyon's name as our boy struggles against the chains. The hired ogre mocks the villager, saying it must be painful to watch his master die. He swings his massive weapon, calling out Lyon's weak nature despite his beastly form. The hired ogre tells Lyon he can't shake off his human weakness. This dude loves to monologue. The villager screams for someone named Puffin as the hired ogre prepares to execute him. Lyon and the hired ogre have a stare-down, the tension thick enough to cut with an axe. A close-up on Lyon's eye shows it's still blue. He's fighting to stay in control. The orcs pull the spiked chains, digging them deeper into Lyon's flesh. The chains are pulled taut, showing the sheer force being used to restrain him. Lyon catches the hired ogre's weapon with his bare hands. Absolute Chad move. The hired ogre promises to destroy Lyon's mind and leave only a mindless beast. Lyon's hand grips the blade, blood dripping as he refuses to let go. He yanks the weapon with incredible force, pulling the hired ogre forward. Lyon uses the momentum to swing the hired ogre around like a damn ragdoll. The hired ogre is sent flying, looking genuinely shocked for the first time in this fight. He lands hard, managing to hold onto his weapon but clearly rattled. The remaining villager prisoners look on, completely stunned by Lyon's raw power. Lyon, still chained, now holds a spear surrounded by a strange blue energy. Lyon's eyes flash as he remembers Uncle Nelson's dying words. A flashback shows Nelson telling Lyon to keep his sanity no matter what. The hired ogre calls Lyon's power remarkable, admitting true ogres get stronger with bloodlust. He explains that the scent of human blood makes ogres more ferocious. Lyon's eyes glow pure red as he fully succumbs to his ogre instincts. Lyon glares at the hired ogre, demanding to know who the hell he is. The hired ogre just laughs, asking if Lyon can feel the blood-soaked ground vibrating. He continues his taunts, talking about the smell of orc and human blood mixing. Lyon's eyes glow blue again, showing he's still fighting for control of his mind. The hired ogre reveals he's a mixed-blood mongrel too, just like Lyon. Plot twist. The scene cuts back to the village wall, where orcs are still trying to scale the defenses. The village archers hold their ground, looking grim but determined to fight. The hired ogre monologues about how a half-ogre was raised in a peaceful valley. Leon pants heavily, the strain of the fight and his inner conflict taking its toll. The hired ogre stands across from him, battered but still talking down to our boy. He asks Leon why a creature with such a bounty on its head hasn't been hunted until now. The two monsters face off, preparing for the next round of their brutal duel. A flashback begins showing the hired ogre's people, the Uruk of the wastelands. The narration explains the Uruk are a human-orc crossbreed from old battlefields. An Uruk warrior is shown, said to have the advantages of both races. They're described as masters of combat, command, and guerrilla warfare. The Uruk were created by lost shamanic magic, making them extremely rare. After the wars ended, they became penniless mercenaries to survive. They took on dangerous hunts, like fighting a massive crystal golem in the desert. A squad of Uruk mercenaries is shown trekking through the barren wastelands. A close-up shows the Uruk mercs, including a younger version of the hired ogre. An Uruk gets an arrow straight through the eye. Yeah, it's a tough life. The Uruk leader faces off against a giant rock monster, just another Tuesday for them. A younger hired ogre stands his ground against a massive rock-skinned ogre. The narration explains the Uruk mercs ran into this legendary ogre while on a job. The slaughterer ogre grabs a Uruk merc, about to turn him into a red paste. A close-up reveals this monster is the slaughterer of the central continent. The full Uruk squad, including the hired ogre, prepares to fight the slaughterer. The Uruk mercs charge the slaughterer ogre, knowing it's a fight for survival. The scene shifts to a mountain at night, with blue energy erupting from the peak. The narration ominously says, "unfortunately," setting up the inevitable tragedy. The text confirms that only one person made it out of that fight alive. A brutal shot shows a Uruk merc getting completely obliterated in a splash of blood. The narration repeats that only one individual survived to the end. The hired ogre is shown lying defeated among the bodies of his slaughtered comrades. The flashback transitions to a shot of a peaceful forest, ending the backstory. The Uruk leader's warg is shown, connecting the past trauma to the present invasion. The hired ogre, now older, is shown riding his own mount with a subordinate. The narration reveals the survivor has been watching a remote forest for years. The hired ogre, now wearing a blindfold, rides with a grim, determined look. He's been waiting for revenge on the offspring of his enemy. Leon's dad is the slaughterer. Back in the present, orcs try to restrain Leon with massive spiked chains. An orc commander orders his troops not to give Leon any openings. Leon, surrounded, is told to be swarmed and stabbed by everyone at once. Leon cuts through an orc like it's nothing, a blur of absolute carnage. The orcs are ordered to use specific anti-troll and anti-gnoll tactics on him. Leon lets out a deafening roar, completely lost in his berserker rage. The hired ogre watches Leon's rampage, looking unimpressed by the orc's efforts. An orc complains they're completely helpless and just wasting lives against one ogre. The hired ogre looks up at the village wall where the defenders are watching. The villagers on the watchtower look down at the battle in stunned silence. The village chief looks on in horror, realizing the scale of the monster he raised. A villager reports that the orc army has stopped advancing to focus solely on Leon. The chief watches as Leon single-handedly holds off the entire enemy force. The orcs finally manage to whip out another spiked chain, aiming for Leon. The chain successfully wraps around Leon's leg, and he's momentarily caught. Leon slams his weapon into the ground to stop himself from being pulled over. A close-up shows Leon's blue eyes are still there. He's fighting for control. The hired ogre finally makes his move, leaping into the fray to fight Leon himself. The hired ogre brings his weapon down in a massive overhead strike. Leon grits his teeth and manages to block the powerful blow with his own weapon. The two half-ogres are locked in a brutal clash, a storm of steel and rage. The hired ogre presses his attack, drawing blood as they trade blows. They exchange a flurry of slashes, moving too fast for the orcs to follow. Leon gets a face full of blood after the hired ogre lands a clean hit. The hired ogre grins maniacally, clearly enjoying a real fight for once. He lets out a wild roar, looking completely unhinged and ready for more. Leon counters with a massive swing, sending the hired ogre flying backward. The hired ogre is launched through the air, completely overpowered by Leon's raw strength. He crashes to the ground in a bloody heap, finally taking some serious damage. Leon stands over his opponent, having decisively won the first exchange. The hired ogre lies on the ground, admitting it was worth it to sacrifice his limbs. Leon pants heavily, the strain of the berserker state finally starting to show. The hired ogre lies defeated, saying he's ready for the final act of his plan. Leon pants heavily as the hired ogre narrates that they're almost at the end. The hired ogre grins, having successfully baited Leon into a full-blown berserker rage. He lies broken on the ground, but he's still running his mouth like he won. The hired ogre monologues about Leon's true, suppressed form finally awakening. A flashback shows the orc army getting absolutely demolished by Leon's rampage. Leon stands alone in a crater of his own making, a one-man apocalypse. The hired ogre says everyone who watched over Leon will now see his true nature. The village chief looks down from the wall, his face a mask of grim realization. The hired ogre's narration promises the villagers will be terrified of their boy. Leon stands surrounded by a destructive aura, having completely lost control. He lets out a final agonized roar, crying tears of blood and exhaustion. Leon's body finally gives out, and he collapses backward onto the battlefield. He lies unconscious, with the hired ogre saying he'll now be left all alone. We get another shot of Leon's berserker roar just to drive the point home. The villagers watch from the wall as their secret weapon powers down. Leon stands alone in the aftermath, the sole survivor of his own destructive power. An orc says the hired ogre threw his life away, ordering a full retreat. Leon is shown again in the center of the carnage. The battle officially over. The village stands silent against the red sky, the immediate threat now gone. Villagers rush out to tend to their wounded after the brutal siege. The village wall is shown, battered but still standing after the orc assault. A villager screams Leon's name as the chief looks on with a stoic expression. The villagers surround Leon's massive, unconscious body, unsure what to do. The chief asks about Leon's condition, wondering if their boy is even still alive. A villager named Ken points out Leon tanked countless attacks with his bare body. Ken notes Leon's insane healing factor is already kicking in. Ogre perks, I guess. The chief grimaces, finally accepting the sheer scale of Leon's monstrous power. A villager worries about the orc neurotoxin, but the chief needs answers from Leon. Another villager suggests they just interrogate the dying hired ogre instead. Smart move. A villager points out the hired ogre is still breathing and suggests a confirmation kill. The hired ogre says he's near death and ready to spill the beans. How convenient. The chief warns his men not to listen, knowing this guy rallied the bandits. The chief connects the non-Orcish letter to the hired ogre, calling him out. He deduces the hired ogre has a grudge against Leon from the wastelands. The chief demands to know why Leon was targeted, standing over the dying villain. The hired ogre agrees to talk, claiming his revenge is already accomplished. He tells the chief that thinking he was protecting Leon was a huge mistake. The hired ogre mocks their isolation behind the barrier, saying they were blind. A flashback shows a glowing blue reptilian eye, hinting at a much bigger threat. The hired ogre drops a bomb. The slaughterer of the central continent is back. He reveals a blue dragon is behind the slaughterer's return. The plot just thickened. The chief and his men are stunned by the news of a legendary dragon's involvement. The hired ogre continues his lecture, this time on ogre mating habits. He explains that adult ogres normally fight to the death rather than submit. A flashback shows a beaten blonde woman held by the slaughterer ogre. It's mom and dad. The hired ogre questions why a monster like the slaughterer would choose submission. He tells the chief his obsession with this whole situation started right there. We see a close-up of Leon's unconscious face, the center of this whole mess. The hired ogre concludes that this all started because of one human woman, Leon's mom. The village chief looks absolutely floored by the hired ogre's reveal about Leon's mom. The hired ogre explains he smelled the slaughterer's blood on her, which is how he tracked them. His narration reveals his obsession, claiming only he had the right to hunt the half-blood. He admits he gathered the orcs just to torment the forest and lure Leon out. The hired ogre confesses to creating the forest maze that got Feron's dumb ass lost. He mocks their precious barrier, saying it only served to keep them ignorant of his plans. The chief grits his teeth as the hired ogre calls the forest useless to him. The hired ogre laughs, rubbing it in that the chief hid Leon only for him to grow this strong. A flashback shows the slaughterer ogre as the hired ogre questions his own motives. The hired ogre admits in a flashback that revenge for his people might not have been the point. He wonders why he just wanted to make Leon a lonely outcast, just like him. A close-up shows an eye blinking open. Someone's waking up from their nap. The hired ogre taunts the chief, asking if he got a good look at Leon's true nature. We see Leon's unconscious face upside down, looking like a full-blown monster. Another shot of Leon's face still out cold after his rampage. The villagers debate over Leon's body, with Ken arguing that nature can't be helped. Ken questions if they can control Leon when he becomes even more of an ogre. A single tear rolls down Leon's cheek. My man is unconscious, but he can hear everything. Ken points out that an entire Uruk-led army couldn't stop Leon. He's making him sound like a nuke. The chief looks on with deep concern as Ken continues to sow fear among the villagers. Ken argues that protecting Lyon might put the entire village in mortal danger. The villagers stand over Lyon as Ken drives home the point that he's a threat. The chief grips his sword, vowing not to fail the village after losing his son. A villager warns that if the Uruk was right, dragon hunters will be coming for Lyon. A village elder shuts Ken down, reminding him that Lyon is just a 13-year-old kid. The elder tells Ken to get his priorities straight, gesturing toward the unconscious Lyon. The elder grabs Ken, telling him to shut up before the kid hears their whole debate. Lyon lies there with a tear on his face, confirming he heard every damn word. Lyon's internal monologue reveals he knows the elders are fighting because of his rampage. He thinks about the villagers tending to the wounded while he's the cause of the argument. Lyon's eyes are shown as he questions why he lost control and went berserk. He looks at his reflection, wondering if this monstrous form is what his father looked like. The village elders continue to argue, completely oblivious that their patient is awake. Lyon's thoughts reveal he hates his appearance and is worried about his own safety. The scene shifts to a peaceful night sky, a brief calm after the storm. Lyon is already standing and talking to an elder. His healing factor is absolutely broken. Lyon explains he was late telling his mom, but the elder reassures him it's okay. The elder tells Lyon he saved the village and that he's proud of him. Finally, some support. Lyon looks down, his glowing eye betraying his inner conflict as he quietly agrees. The elder gives Lyon antidote herbs for the orc poison, a practical but cold gesture. Lyon says he's going back to his mother, trying to act normal after all the chaos. The elder calls out Lyon's name just as he's about to leave the village. The elder simply tells Lyon to go on, dismissing him with a heavy heart. Other villagers watch Lyon leave with distrustful and fearful expressions. The damage is done. Lyon walks away in silence, his glowing blue eye showing he knows he's not welcome. He leaps into the air, rocketing back toward the forest and his isolated home. The full moon shines down as Lyon flies through the night sky. The creepy glowing-eyed crow makes another appearance, watching Lyon from the trees. A mysterious blonde man with a scarred face stands alone in a dark forest clearing. The new blonde character looks up with a calm, calculating gaze. This can't be good. The mysterious scarred blonde man stands silently in the woods, just watching from the shadows. Lyon's monstrous, blood-flecked hand reaches out, showing he's still not fully back to normal. Lyon looks up with his tusks and glowing eyes, looking like a worried beast searching for its family. He finally spots his mom, Leonia, standing near the fence and immediately calls out to her. Lyon sprints toward her, screaming that it's dangerous to be outside after everything that happened. His mom just tells him to calm down, acting completely unbothered by the recent apocalypse. Lyon stops in his tracks, still on high alert as he watches his mother from a distance. She tells him nothing happened at the cabin, but says that's not the real problem here. Lyon looks down, still panting and overwhelmed as he weakly calls out her name again. Leonia calls him out for ignoring her warnings and rushing headfirst into the village battle. Lyon just takes the lecture, his face showing the full weight of his mom's disappointment. She brings up Nelson's death and coldly asks if that's what made him lose control. Lyon's blood-stained hand clenches into a fist as he's forced to relive the trauma. A quick flashback shows Uncle Nelson patting a much younger Lyon on the head. Lyon's eyes glow with raw emotion as he remembers the kindness of the man he couldn't save. Nelson's voice echoes from the past, saying he'd want a son just like Lyon. Oof, right in the feels. Back in the present, Lyon looks at his mom, the painful memory hitting him like a truck. He looks down at his monstrous hand and apologizes for worrying her. Lyon admits that seeing Uncle Nelson die in such a brutal way is what made him snap. He tries to explain how much Nelson meant to him, justifying his berserker rage. He gets agitated again, recalling how Nelson's dying words were a warning to keep his sanity. His mom asks what facts Nelson was afraid he'd find out. She definitely knows something. A flashback shows a massive rock-skinned ogre in the pouring rain. That's gotta be Dad. A close-up of the slaughterer ogre confirms he's the stuff of nightmares. Lyon asks his mom if his uncontrollable ferocity is something he inherited from his father. His mom's hand trembles as she begs him to stop and starts apologizing. She grabs her head and has a full-blown breakdown, screaming that she just can't talk about it. Lyon is completely stunned, watching his normally stoic mother completely fall apart. He rushes forward to catch his mom as she collapses from the emotional weight. Lyon holds his mother in a hug, trying to comfort her through the breakdown. The scene fades out with a final "I'm sorry" as birds fly into the night sky. We cut to a new location, the territory of a noble named Baron Bills. Inside a fancy room, someone is complaining that the dragon hunting area was breached. A greasy-looking noble, Baron Bills, whines about wasted effort and forgotten traditions. A blonde knight named Herman listens patiently as the Baron complains about lack of profit. The Baron reveals they're after the Blue Dragon, but he's pissed it's not making him rich. Herman reminds his boss they still have to follow the sacred mobilization order. The Baron calls Herman his profit-minded knight, and Herman just tells him not to worry. Herman reports that they've done just enough to keep their superiors off their backs for now. He adds that the hunt turned up some extraordinary things just as the Baron predicted. Herman reveals they found evidence of a human-ogre crossbreed. They're on Lyon's trail. The Baron's face lights up with pure greed, calling the half-ogre a profitable find. He asks Herman if this harvest will be a good one, and Herman just stands there silently. Baron Bills reaches for his goblet, looking smug as he plans to cash in on Lyon. The scene transitions with the ominous promise to just wait a little. Herman's inner monologue reveals he's planning to kill the Baron. About damn time. We cut to a new character, a red-haired mercenary named Tilok, waiting in an alley. A mysterious hooded knight approaches Tilok, clearly looking for him. Tilok tells the knight to stop right there, already looking for a fight. He gets in the knight's face, asking if he thinks mercenaries are just pushovers. The hooded knight, Herman, looks pissed off, complaining about scholars under his breath. Herman calls out Tilok, telling him he's got 3 tails and asking if they're friend or foe. Tilok gets in Herman's face, pissed that their swift and unknown job is already compromised. The mercenary and the knight have a tense stare-down, sizing each other up in the alley. A fully armored knight with a face-covering helmet interrupts their little meeting. The armored knight threatens Herman, telling him to know his place or get his lifeline cut. Tilok asks Herman if he can handle the numbers, since hunting an ogre in a forest is no joke. A masked figure is shown spying on the whole exchange from a nearby rooftop. Herman's only thought is profit, confirming he's just as greedy as his boss, Baron Bills. The scene cuts to a peaceful forest landscape, a total contrast to the shady dealings. Leon walks through the woods alone, still in his semi-transformed ogre state. Leon looks up at the sky with a lost and pained expression, clearly still reeling. A massive walled city is shown in the distance, probably where the Baron's crew is from. A close-up on Leon's face shows the internal conflict after leaving his village behind. A new masked character appears in the forest, deciding he needs to hunt for food. Leon grits his teeth, the emotional weight of the battle and its aftermath hitting him hard. Leon leaps through the trees, realizing he can't go back to the village for a while. The scene shows the dense forest canopy as Leon travels deeper into the wilderness. A massive wild boar charges through the undergrowth, about to have a very bad day. The boar is suddenly airborne, looking like it got hit by a damn truck. Leon runs alongside the boar with glowing white eyes, his hunting instincts kicking in. The boar's eye is wide with pure terror as it realizes what's hunting it. The boar gets yeeted through the air again, completely powerless against Leon's strength. The boar continues its unscheduled flight through the forest. This is just overkill. The boar is still flying, a testament to the sheer force Leon is using. Leon leaps into the air above the boar, admitting he was never taught how to hunt. Leon's narration explains his mother tried to tame him into being human. The boar is still crying in midair as Leon's narration says there was a good reason for it. The boar's hooves scrape the ground as it tries desperately to stop its momentum. The boar tumbles end over end, getting absolutely ragdolled by our boy. The boar is sent flying once more because why not at this point? The boar finally skids to a halt, kicking up a cloud of dust and dirt. The reflection in the boar's terrified eye shows Leon looming over it, ready to finish the job. Leon stands over his prey, realizing his father's blood makes him a natural hunter. He admits to himself that he picked up the methods of a beast incredibly quickly. Leon drops from the trees, explaining the predator's instinct to weaken and kill his prey. Leon's narration continues as he wonders if this monstrous side is what his father was like. He places a hand on the dead boar, questioning if his mom was afraid of this part of him. Leon looks down at his kill, wondering if his mother feared seeing his father's image in him. Leon's internal monologue reveals his confusion, admitting none of this makes sense to him. We cut back to Herman and Tilok, who are now trekking through the Feron forest. Tilok explains the forest used to be a death trap full of armed gnolls and trolls. Herman questions if the trolls were trained, picking up on the weird details. Tilok smirks, sarcastically asking if Herman thinks a racial war happened out here. Herman looks confused, not getting what the hell Tilok is trying to say. Tilok laughs it off as an exaggeration, but says the truth was something similar. Herman listens intently as Tilak mentions a remote village that trading companies visit. Tilak reveals the recent orc attack was led by an Uruk, the same one who fought Leon. Tilak notes the Uruk was a commander in the racial wars, making his presence here suspicious. Tilak lets out a sinister little laugh, clearly enjoying being the only one with all the info. Tilak smirks at Herman, asking if he's surprised this simple monster hunt is so damn complicated. Herman stays silent under his hood, not giving the smug mercenary anything to work with. Tilak promises there are more surprises to come and tells Herman they're almost at their destination. The scene transitions with a shot of the sun shining through the forest canopy. We cut to Herman's men getting their asses handed to them by a troll. So much for the elite squad. The rest of Herman's squad is shown cleaning up some goblins, one grabbing a goblin by the throat. The soldier notes the goblin already spilled everything it knew before getting offed. He confirms that after the Uruk leader died, all the local monsters just scattered without a leader. The scene pans over the dark, ominous forest as the squad moves deeper in. One of Herman's men admits his boss was right, and this isn't just some random backwoods village. The soldier reports that Herman is following Tilak to a place directly related to their target. The men question why their orders changed, clearly confused about the new plan. Tilak points Herman toward a small cabin in the distance, having found Leon's home. Herman figures Tilak must have found something more interesting than just the village itself. The rest of Herman's squad approaches the village wall, splitting the party. Classic mistake. The soldiers get their orders to move on the village, looking up at the wooden defenses. We cut to Leon's isolated cabin at night, looking deceptively peaceful. Inside, Leon's mom, Leonia, sits alone at a table lit by a single candle. Leonia peeks out from behind a door, her face tense with worry. She knows she's not alone. The camera shows the dark woods just outside the cabin's flimsy-looking fence. The shot lingers on the fence line, building the tension before the inevitable home invasion. Leon's internal monologue shows him thinking about his father, still trying to process everything. Leonia is shown at her table, having prepared a meal while waiting for her son to return. A close-up shows tears in Leonia's eyes. She's clearly dreading what's coming. A gauntleted fist slams down hard, signaling the arrival of uninvited guests. Leonia is startled by the sudden noise, her worst fears realized. The camera shows her empty doorway, the threat still just out of sight. Tilak kicks the door in, screaming that the house is empty. He didn't even knock. The wooden door splinters into pieces from the force of Tilak's kick. Tilak storms in and is surprised to see Leonia sitting calmly at the table. Tilak gives a fake, smarmy apology, calling her a noble lady of unmatched refinement. Leonia recognizes him immediately, coldly stating that he's visited again. They have history. She tells him to leave, explaining they've cut ties with the village and her son is living quietly. Tilak mocks her, calling her a harlot for choosing an ogre over her noble status. This dude has zero chill. Leonia's eyes widen in shock and anger at his insult. He definitely hit a nerve. Tilak makes a formal, sweeping gesture with his hand, preparing for a grand reveal. He introduces himself and then drops a bomb. He greets her as the Princess of Arcadia, Penslot. Leonia is completely stunned, her secret identity as royalty finally exposed. The hooded Herman steps out from behind Tilak, revealing he was there the whole time. Tilak and Herman now stand together, confronting the runaway princess in her rustic cabin. Herman comments on finding her in such a humble place, his tone dripping with condescension. He tells her that living like this is beneath her noble character. The nerve on this guy. Herman finally removes his hood, ordering Princess Penslot to return to their homeland with him. Leonia looks absolutely terrified, her past finally catching up to her in the worst way possible. She tries to refuse, telling Herman that far too much time has passed for her to go back. Leonia argues that if her kingdom really cared, they would have found her years ago. Herman explains that while she was declared dead, her people never stopped hoping for her return. The two men stand before her, their expressions making it clear this isn't a request. Leonia looks up defiantly as Tilak asks if she finds her current life unacceptable. A candle flame is extinguished, symbolizing the end of her quiet life in the forest. Herman tells Leonia he'll clean up her dirty blood, meaning he's planning to kill Leon. The scene cuts to the village watchtower at night, completely unaware of the new drama. A new masked and hooded knight appears in the forest, looking like bad news. A whole squad of these mysterious knights are shown lurking in the woods. The full moon shines down, setting the stage for another night of absolute violence. The masked knights discuss their target, confirming Leon is a half-blood who follows ogre patterns. The lead knight dismisses Leon as just a beast, completely underestimating our boy. Two of the knights move deeper into the forest, looking for their prey. The lead knight is relieved Leon isn't too human-like, calling him a young specimen. Another knight confirms Leon is about 13 years old. They're hunting a kid. The knights talk like they have no choice in this mission. Just following orders, huh? The lead knight predicts Leon will return to this area, setting up their ambush. A knight orders the squad to prepare an ogre hunting formation before Herman shows up. We cut back to Leon carrying a dead boar, looking feral with his glowing eyes. Leon's inner monologue reveals he knows his mom doesn't like the foul smell of his kills. A flashback shows a village auntie scolding a younger Leon about oversalting his food. Leon thinks about asking the auntie for seasoning, still connected to his village life. His thoughts shift to his mom, Leonia, noticing how troubled she's been lately. Leon blames himself for his mom's worry, thinking it's because of his recent rampage. The scene shows the full moon again, a silent witness to the coming conflict. Leon smiles, hoping to cheer his mom up with the food he hunted. Poor kid has no idea. Leon's eyes suddenly go wide with alarm. His ogre senses finally picked something up. A volley of arrows flies through the trees. It's an ambush, just as they planned. The arrows slam into the boar Leon was carrying, which he uses as a makeshift shield. Leon looks down at his kill, now a pincushion, and he is not happy about it. He pulls the arrows from the boar's hide, his glowing eyes fixed on the darkness. Leon dodges another attack, moving with a blur of speed that surprises his hunters. He leaps away into the trees, abandoning his kill to deal with the new threat. Leon lands, looking genuinely confused about why he's being attacked again. He realizes he couldn't smell or sense his attackers, meaning they're skilled hunters. Leon stands surrounded by a strange aura, realizing he's being hunted like an animal. His internal monologue confirms his suspicion as he processes the situation. The thought concludes with definitely a hunt as blood splatters across the panel. Leon looks around wildly, trying to pinpoint the location of his hidden enemies. He spins around and demands to know who is attacking him. A close-up on Leon's glowing blue eyes shows he's ready for a fight. A masked knight drops from above, swinging his sword straight at Leon's head. Leon grins and catches the blade with his bare hand. This dude learned nothing from the last fight. He effortlessly shatters the knight's sword with his raw strength, flexing on him hard. Leon looks absolutely unhinged, clearly enjoying that he's not the only one getting hurt. The knight manages to land a slash across Leon's chest, drawing first blood. Leon grunts in pain, blood dripping from his mouth as he takes the hit. The knight who attacked him is now on his back, trying to deliver a killing blow. The knight's body hits the ground in a pool of blood. Leon is not messing around. Leon stands over the dead knight, his rage building as he asks why this is happening. He pants heavily, the confusion and pain evident on his face. Leon kneels in the dark, lamenting that he was just trying to live quietly. He demands to know the reason for the attack as another knight closes in. The second knight just hums, completely unfazed by his dead comrade, cold-blooded. The knight holds his sword to Leon's throat, telling him that life is unfair. The masked knight brings his sword down, ready to execute a kneeling Leon. Leon glares up, his glowing blue eyes full of defiance as he spits blood. A close-up on Leon's eye shows he's done playing the victim. The scene cuts back to Leonia in the cabin, a single tear rolling down her face. Leonia stands her ground against Tilak and Herman, looking cornered but not broken. Leonia's eyes narrow with determination. She's clearly been in tough spots before. Tilak smirks at Herman, enjoying the drama like the scumbag he is. Tilak's inner monologue mocks scholars as predictable, showing his arrogance. Herman's thoughts reveal he's analyzing the situation, calling someone's move rash. Leonia internally scoffs at their pretentiousness, wondering if all nobles are this insufferable. Tilak looks at Leonia with contempt, his thoughts calling her pathetic. A flashback shows a younger, scarred Leonia standing over a defeated knight. Younger Leonia's narration reveals she saw their condescension was just a front. Tilak taunts Leonia, telling her nothing will go her way in her current state. Leonia grits her teeth, her expression hardening at Tilak's constant insults. Tilak and Herman are suddenly alerted by something, their smug looks gone. Leonia declares that they, the visitors, are the ones who will be bleeding tonight. Herman stares back at Leonia, his expression unreadable but clearly intrigued. Herman whips his head around, sensing an imminent threat from outside. The view rushes out the window as something barrels toward the cabin. Leon smashes through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man, immediately attacking the intruders. Leon grabs Herman by the face, who is shocked at how he was found. Leon holds Herman in his grip as Tylok prepares to intervene from the side. Herman manages to block Leon's punch with his gauntlet, proving he's no slouch. Herman draws his sword as Leon's glowing eye reflects the blade's movement. Herman unleashes a powerful swing with a glowing blue sword. This ain't no standard issue blade. Leon looks genuinely surprised as the enchanted blade nearly takes his head off. A close-up on Herman's eyes shows he's completely serious and focused on the fight. Herman is impressed by Leon's agility, questioning where a beast learned such moves. A massive explosion of blue energy erupts as their powers collide. The cabin's floorboards are completely shattered from the force of the impact. Tylok is blown back by the shockwave, calling the display impossible. Tylok's inner monologue admits Herman's shamelessness is extraordinary. He's impressed. Tylok lies on the floor, wondering if Herman was hiding his true strength all along. Tylok recognizes Herman is a true sword expert, not just some knight. Leon stands protectively in front of his mother, shielding her from the threat. Herman stands ready, his glowing sword humming with power as he sizes up Leon. Leon stands between his mom and Herman, ready for round 2. Leon growls his own name, his glowing eye locked on his opponent. Leonia tells Leon to calm down and leave, insisting she'll be fine. Famous last words. Herman ignores her and unleashes a massive horizontal slash of blue energy. The energy wave hits Leon dead on, sending a spray of blood across the room. Herman stands over a wounded Leon, asking how he managed to survive that. Herman warns Leon that the next strike will be without mercy. Herman turns to Tylok, demanding an excuse for this mess. He's pissed at his intel. Herman questions how a mere beast could have outmaneuvered his apprentice knights. Leon glares up from the shadows, his eyes glowing with rage at being called a beast. Herman has a flashback to the forest, remembering the arrows from the ambush. The flashback shows the bloody corpse of the masked knight Leon killed earlier. The surviving knight's narration admits he never enjoyed hunting the young ones. The surviving masked knight monologues over a kneeling Leon, sizing him up like a piece of meat. The knight tells Leon to give up, dropping some edgy philosophy about not being able to change his nature. He raises his sword for the killing blow, calling Leon's only purpose in life to be hunted. Leon glares up from the ground, looking like he's about to prove that theory very, very wrong. A close-up on Leon's reptilian eye shows he's done listening to this guy's bullshit. The knight's sword comes down in a flash of light, aiming to end it right there. The knight is completely stunned because his target is suddenly gone. He missed. Badly. Leon moves in a blur, leaping clean over the knight's head before he can even react. The knight screams in frustration, completely baffled by Leon's impossible speed. Leon's hand comes down from above, ready to deliver a serious beatdown. He grabs the knight by the face, giving him the same treatment he gave Herman. It's his signature move. Leon smashes the knight's head into the ground, shattering his helmet and his ego. The knight goes flying as his buddy screams in terror. So much for the elite ogre hunting squad. Leon stands surrounded by his aura, having perfectly predicted their every move. The downed knight can't believe a specimen could be this powerful. They really underestimated the kid. The knight notes Leon should be unconscious, finally realizing their intel was garbage. The lead knight panics, wondering if their drugs failed, and orders his men to rush him. Leon unleashes a devastating spin attack, turning into a whirlwind of pure violence. A close-up shows Leon's determined face as he blitzes through their formation. The lead knight braces for impact, holding his sword like it's going to do anything. Leon zips past the knights in a blur, leaving them in the dust. The lead knight is confused, realizing Leon isn't fighting them anymore. He's just leaving. The creepy crow watches as Leon's inner monologue reveals he knows they poisoned him. The knights regroup as Leon figures out their poison was meant to make him a mindless beast. The knights stand around looking useless, completely unable to track their target. One of the knights complains about the forest's echo, totally disoriented and out of his league. Leon watches them from the darkness, officially turning this hunt completely around. The knight Leon just beat down has the nerve to ask what harm he's ever done. Leon asks if he's supposed to just lie down and die because of how he was born. Leon's glowing eyes appear in the shadows as he prepares to school these fools on survival. He looms over the knight, asking if all the other beasts they hunted died so obediently. The knight flinches, trying to block an attack he can't even see coming. Leon moves like a phantom, attacking the entire squad at once from the shadows. The knight realizes Leon is using their own hallucinogen against them. My man weaponized their poison. A close-up on the knight's eye shows pure terror as he realizes they are now the prey. A massive shockwave erupts from Leon's attack, sending the knights flying. A knight is shown through a hazy blur, completely tripping balls from the hallucinogen. The knight stumbles around, swinging at nothing while Leon plays with his mind. The lead knight confirms his man didn't even touch Leon. This is just embarrassing for them. The lead knight realizes their scent-masking smoke has cleared, leaving them exposed. He looks up at the moon, figuring out Leon is now heading straight for Herman. The knight grits his teeth, knowing he absolutely cannot let that monster reach his boss. Leon rockets through the forest canopy at impossible speeds. The knight's narration confirms his fears as Leon closes in on the cabin. Leon barrels toward his home, wondering if he's a beast or a human. We see Leonia's determined face as Leon decides it doesn't matter anymore. The flashback cuts to Herman's face in the cabin, right before Leon's grand entrance. Leon's face is shown as he wonders what he has to become just to survive. Back in the present, Leonia looks on in absolute horror at the scene in her cabin. Herman stands over the wounded Leon, his magic sword at his throat, asking if he's had enough yet. Herman monologues that he was just curious about the beast's perspective. Bro, you're not a philosopher, you're a bully. Herman tells Leon to die properly in front of his mother. This guy's got a real talent for being a complete dick. He swings his glowing sword at Leon, hoping to break Leonia's spirit by killing her son. Leon stands firm against the incoming wave of blue energy, refusing to go down. Leonia watches in horror, her narration trailing off as she says, "Absolutely." Leon finishes her thought, vowing that he won't let Herman have his way. Herman is shown in a stylized panel, looking completely unbothered by Leon's defiance. A close-up on Herman's face shows him calling Leon's resistance rude. The nerve on this guy is legendary. T-Lock complains about Aura Blade users being temperamental as Leonia calls Herman vicious. T-Lock gives a smug grin, clearly enjoying every second of this family drama. Leon makes a tactical retreat, leaping out of the demolished cabin into the night. A close-up reveals a glowing green pendant around Leon's neck. That's a new accessory. Leon lands in the woods, his narration confirming this is all part of his plan. Herman stands in the wreckage, surrounded by his blue aura and looking absolutely furious. Herman's eyes narrow as he silently processes Leon's escape. He's not done yet. Herman's hand reaches behind his back, preparing to switch up his strategy. He pulls out a glowing spear, surprising T-Lock. This dude came with extra weapons. The spear fully materializes in Herman's hand, humming with magical energy. Herman's eyes glow white as he powers up his new toy, ready for a long-range attack. He winds up for the throw, channeling a ridiculous amount of energy into the spear. Herman launches the spear, which transforms into a massive beam of destructive blue light. The energy blast rips through the cabin wall and carves a path into the forest. The beam of light continues its flight through the night sky. That's one hell of a signal flare. The masked knights in the forest see the explosion and are completely stunned. One of the knights immediately recognizes the attack as belonging to Lord Herman. Tylock's inner monologue concludes that Leon must have finally pissed Herman off for real. Tylock's narration explains Herman carries a spear, a weapon beneath a sword expert, for profit. A flashback shows peasants with axes and spears, confirming it's a commoner's weapon. Tylock's thoughts reveal Herman modified the spear to channel aura, making it a specialized hunting tool. Tylock realizes that Herman pulling out this weapon means he's taking this hunt seriously. The lead knight tells his men Herman's position is confirmed and orders them to move immediately. One of the knights voices concern about attracting other monsters by rushing through the woods. The lead knight grunts in frustration, admitting they've already lost their target, Leon. The lead knight tells his men to worry more about Herman's wrath than some random monsters. The squad of masked knights begins their sprint through the dark forest. The knights are shown as a blur of motion, rushing to their commander's location. The squad continues to move at high speed through the undergrowth. Leon leaps through the air, the full moon illuminating his escape. Leon's inner monologue reveals he's feeling the effects of the knight's poison. The scene blurs as Leon admits he feels dizzy and confused from the drug. Leon continues to move on pure instinct, letting his body take over. He questions if this primal instinct is the true nature he inherited from his father. Leon's thoughts turn to the principle of hunting as he analyzes the situation. He realizes that cornered prey, especially humans, will inevitably chase their hunter. Leon's plan is revealed as he anticipates his pursuers, just as Herman's spear closes in. The glowing blue tip of the energy spear is shown hurtling right for him. Leon snarls, turning to face the incoming attack head-on. No more running. The spear makes a direct hit, causing a massive explosion of blood and blue energy. Leon is sent flying backward through the night sky from the sheer force of the blast. The scene cuts to the village wall, still littered with arrows from the orc siege, a grim reminder of the last battle. Herman's spear blast leaves a smoke trail, basically a giant "I'm over here" sign for the whole forest. The village chief and his men see the smoke from the watchtower, and he immediately says Leonia's name. A villager points out that's definitely not a cooking fire, wondering what fresh hell is breaking loose. The blonde villager reminds the chief that Ken, the village's resident doomsayer, totally called this. The same guy grows a conscience, asking if they're really just going to watch Leon and his mom die. Another villager argues that if Leon can't handle it, their spears and farming tools won't do jack shit. The smoke continues to rise from the forest, a silent beacon of the chaos at the cabin. The chief stares into the night, questioning if protecting the village means abandoning his friends. A bearded villager warns that Leonia's trouble could become the entire village's death sentence. The chief finally makes a decision, telling his men to grab their gear and move out. About damn time. He leads the way over the wall while the blonde villager nervously agrees to follow him into the mess. The camera rushes toward the village's wooden wall, signaling that uninvited guests are approaching. Something blurs through the dark forest at high speed, drawn by all the commotion. A pack of pissed-off, glowing-eyed wolves are on the move, and they do not look friendly. More blurs of motion confirm the masked knights are finally closing in on Herman's position. The masked knights arrive at the wrecked cabin to find their boss, Herman, waiting for them. Herman stands alone in the mist, looking like a final boss who's about to chew out his minions. The lead knight approaches Herman, probably trying to think of a good excuse for getting clowned by a kid. The entire squad of masked knights kneels before Herman, formally admitting they got their asses beat. Herman coldly states that they're already behind schedule, confirming his squad's total incompetence. The lead knight takes the L, reporting that their failure was, without a doubt, their own damn fault. Herman sarcastically asks if he should feel humiliated by his elite squad's pathetic performance. The lead knight frantically warns Herman that Leon is far more dangerous than their intel suggested. He explains that Leon has the deadly combination of an ogre's instinct and a human's intelligence. The knight's eyes show pure fear as he recalls that Leon is basically a weaponized thinking monster. He tries to save face by saying they're just disposable tools for Lord Herman's grand plan. Herman just says good, accepting their pathetic excuse before moving on to his next move. Herman tells his men to offer their empty hand, talking about profit while looking ready to execute them. Herman's gaze hardens as he focuses on the next phase of his hunt, completely done with his squad's failures. The village chief and his small posse arrive in the woods, looking completely out of their depth. The villagers stumble upon Herman and his kneeling knights, walking right into the middle of a trap. One of the masked knights raises his hands, trying to look non-threatening to the newcomers. Herman smirks, calling the villagers bait that has arrived right on schedule. This dude is a menace. A villager demands to know who they are, but the chief quickly tells him to shut his mouth. The chief's face darkens with dread as he realizes these are the very hunters he was warned about. We cut to a flashback of a stern-looking lord at his desk, with his son standing behind him. The son argues against a 70% tax rate, while his father dismisses any rebellion as a child's tantrum. The scene shifts to the dark, oppressive streets of the lord's town at night. The son reveals his anger stems from seeing innocent farming girls hanged in the public square. A horrifying shot shows 3 women hanging from the gallows under a grim, stormy sky. The son's narration says he'd rather die fighting, as the creepy crow watches from a corpse. The son stands with other downtrodden villagers, the seeds of a revolution being planted. The Lord reveals he knew his son was involved with one of the girls, twisting the knife with blackmail. The father calls his son's justified anger dangerous resentment. What a gaslighting piece of shit. The son apologizes to his father, but it's clear his revolutionary fire hasn't been put out. The flashback continues, showing a hand gripping a weapon as an uprising against Lord Soiran begins. The son leads a full-blown peasant rebellion, screaming for battle against the Lord's castle. The son looks determined as the narration says the Lord was silent, having anticipated this move. The castle gates open to reveal 3 elite, heavily armored knights. This is not going to be a fair fight. A female knight with long red hair and a glowing sword stands ready to slaughter the entire rebellion. The red-haired female knight unleashes a massive blue energy slash from her sword. The peasant rebels stare in absolute terror, realizing they are completely outmatched. The Lord's soldiers close in, trapping the rebels as the energy wave approaches. The Lord's son grits his teeth in horror, watching his entire revolution get wiped out. The rebels are blown away like dust in the wind by the single devastating attack. The Lord's son screams in despair as the narration sarcastically calls it a dignified response. The scene transitions to the quiet town after the massacre, the sky heavy with clouds. The narration explains this was the first large-scale uprising, and it ended in total failure. The rebellion's end is shown with the leader's body hanging from a gallows in the town square. A close-up shows the bloody and broken face of the executed Lord's son. The narrator, the village chief, reveals he had to watch his own son's corpse hang in the square. Lord Sweren is shown dining alone, having let the chief keep his job as a cruel power move. The chief explains that upon receiving a report, he finally decided to flee the territory. The chief's face is filled with grim determination as he recalls his escape from Sweren. The flashback ends on the image of the 3 elite knights, the source of his trauma. The chief's narration calls the memory of those knights an unforgettable terror. The flashback highlights the blonde knight who slaughtered 400 men alone. That's a young Herman. Back in the present, the village chief stands face to face with an older but identical Herman. Herman smirks as his blue aura blade hums, clearly enjoying the chief's terror. The chief has a traumatic vision of his son's hanging corpse superimposed over the scene. The blonde villager calls out to the chief, trying to snap him out of his horrified stupor. The chief and his 2 men stand before Herman's squad, looking completely outgunned. The blonde villager tries to explain something to Herman, who just looks bored. A masked knight shoots the blonde villager in the chest with a crossbow without warning. The chief watches in shock as his man falls, blood spraying from the wound. Another masked knight slashes the other villager across the back, killing him instantly. The chief screams in rage and helplessness as his men are executed right in front of him. 2 masked knights hold the chief at sword point, completely immobilizing him. Herman lectures the chief about etiquette, calling the cold-blooded murder a proper execution. Herman offers the chief a special opportunity with a condescending, villainous look. Herman threatens the chief, telling him he wouldn't want any more executions to happen. A massive blue energy blast suddenly erupts from the forest, interrupting Herman's monologue. Leon reappears, taking the full force of Herman's spear blast to the chest. Leon is sent flying through the night sky, a trail of blue energy in his wake. The energy from the spear attack carves a massive trench through the forest floor. Leon lies motionless in a crater, smoke rising from his battered body. A close-up shows Leon's mangled form, looking completely dead after the direct hit. Leon's inner monologue questions if being born a monster is inherently wrong. His glowing blue eyes snap open in the darkness, refusing to just lie down and die. The full moon is reflected in his reptilian eye as he finds his resolve. Leon's monstrous hand reaches up toward the night sky as if drawing power from it. He lets out a primal scream, his body erupting with a dark, powerful aura. A vision of a massive, demonic wolf with glowing red eyes appears in the woods. The wolf stands beside an orc and other monsters, representing the world he belongs to. Leon screams in agony on the ground, his body still in its half-ogre form. He's surrounded by visions of monsters as he questions what he must become to survive. A close-up on his determined eye shows he's made a decision. No more holding back. A hand runs over an ancient text that says ogres are a poorly understood race. The demonic wolf and an orc look up at the full moon as if answering a call. The demonic wolf snarls, its fangs bared, ready to join the fight. The cavalry is coming. The demonic wolf licks its bloody chops, looking like it's ready for dinner. A scarred blonde woman narrates that powerful monsters are abundant for a good reason. The narration explains ogres are different as we see a full ogre, probably Leon's dad standing over his enemies. A close-up on the full ogre's face questions how they can dominate by acting alone. The ogre is shown with a pack of wolves and another monster, proving he's not a solo act. The full ogre looks back at his monster squad, clearly the leader of this pack. The ogre stands with his crew as the narration asks how they dominate the forests they inhabit. A close-up on the ogre's glowing blue eye shows pure, untamed power. Back in the present, Leon screams to the sky, erupting in a massive blue aura. My boy is powering up. The scene cuts to the village at night, completely oblivious to the shit show unfolding nearby. The narration says there's no other way to describe the ogre's power as he stands ready. A close-up on the ogre's eyes confirms the narration about his extreme expressions. Leon leaps over the village rooftops, now a blur of pure energy and rage. Herman's armored boots hit the ground as he prepares for his next move. The village chief is on his knees, held captive by one of Herman's masked goons. Herman stands with his squad and the captured chief looking smug as hell. The scene shows the village watchtower, where this whole hostage situation is about to be seen. A new blonde villager captain spots the scene through his binoculars, and he is not pleased. Herman looks up directly at the watchtower, knowing he has an audience for his little performance. Herman and his knights stand before the village wall, presenting the chief like a trophy. Herman's aura blade flares to life, ready to send a very clear message. He unleashes a massive energy slash, because subtlety is not in this guy's vocabulary. The blonde captain looks on in absolute shock, realizing how outmatched they are. The energy wave screams toward the village wall, a clear warning shot for everyone watching. The attack splinters into multiple energy projectiles, showing off Herman's precise control. The blast hits the ground before the wall, and the captain freaks out, thinking they're done for. The captain orders a counterattack before realizing Herman deliberately missed. He figures out this was a warning shot, a demand for them to surrender and become hostages. The captain tells his men to stand down, knowing provoking Herman is a death sentence. Herman's squad stands with the chief, who is now on a rope leash like an animal. The chief looks completely broken, sweating as he's paraded in front of his own village. The blonde captain yells, "Wait!" from the tower, clearly about to surrender to save his people. Herman looks up with a cold, dead-eyed stare, having won this round without a real fight. The villagers in the tower wonder if the chief met with these guys, trying to process the betrayal. The captain realizes the chief's escort was killed, finally putting the pieces together. The captain takes command, ordering a search party while he buys time with the enemy. One of his men warns him it's too dangerous to face them alone. "No shit, Sherlock." The captain orders an evacuation through a secret passage if things go south. He's got a plan. He grits his teeth, knowing these invaders see human lives as completely worthless. The damaged ground in front of the village wall serves as a grim reminder of their situation. Herman's squad stands like a row of executioners, waiting for the village's response. Herman remains silent, letting the tension do all the work for him. We cut to Baron Bills monologuing about how will alone doesn't guarantee profit or power. Baron Bills gives a condescending look, asking if someone really thinks they climbed the ladder on their own. A flashback shows a massive white wolf in the snow, introducing another powerful beast. A warrior struggles against the wolf as the narration dismisses his hardships. A younger, bloodied Herman is shown, with the narration saying his lowly origins were a problem. The flashback explains you have to accept that will alone is not enough to succeed. A younger Herman's face hardens as he learns to focus on profit above all else. Back to the present, Leon stands defiant, vowing he won't let Herman get his way. Herman's eyes narrow as he silently stares down the village captain. A crossbow bolt suddenly flies through the air with a flash of blue light. The bolt zips right past Herman's head, aimed at the village wall. The blonde captain, Ken, steps forward, telling Herman he'll handle the introductions. Ken schools Herman on local customs, basically calling him an out-of-touch noble. Herman smirks, immediately seeing through Ken's obvious attempt to buy time. Herman powers up his aura blade, screaming that Ken's little stalling tactic won't work. Ken manages to block Herman's energy blast with his own weapon, causing an explosion. The village chief screams Ken's name in horror as he watches his man get attacked. Ken is thrown back and wounded, but he's still standing against Herman's whole squad. The captured chief begs Herman to punish him instead, trying to protect his people. The chief offers himself up as the only bait needed, pleading for everyone else's lives. Herman's eyes go cold as he says enough, completely done with the negotiations. Herman raises his glowing sword, preparing to execute Ken right in front of everyone. The massive wave of blue energy slams into Ken, who stands his ground. The attack shatters the ground around Ken, who is engulfed in the blast. Herman puts his entire body into the swing, not holding anything back this time. The energy explodes, completely overwhelming Ken's defenses, so much for the hero moment. A close-up shows Ken's leg is now a bloody mess from the attack. Ken looks up, his eyes glowing white as he refuses to go down. Ken is finally forced to his knees before the village wall, completely defeated. Herman tells the chief this is just the beginning of his little performance. Herman smirks, his aura flaring as he prepares to properly provoke his real target. Herman orders his masked knights to finish Ken off, using him as bait for Leon. The knights rush the wounded Ken as Herman's energy swirls around them. Herman declares his intent to cover the entire forest in blood. This guy needs a hobby. Ken grits his teeth, sweating as he prepares to face his executioners. A black and blue blur suddenly intercepts the knights, sending them flying. Leon appears with glowing blue eyes and Ken is completely stunned to see him. Herman laughs like a maniac, thrilled that his plan to lure Leon out worked perfectly. A close-up on Leon's enraged eye shows he is absolutely done with this bullshit. Herman taunts Leon for abandoning his mother to rush into a fight. What a dick. Herman unleashes another massive horizontal slash, aiming to end this quickly. Leon charges forward, meeting the wave of blue energy head-on. Leon reaches out to grab Herman's glowing blade with his bare hand. Classic move. Herman looks completely focused, ready to overpower the Half-Ogre. Herman unleashes a massive point-blank explosion of blue energy. The energy erupts in a blinding flash, completely consuming the area. Herman stands in the aftermath, looking genuinely surprised by the result. Herman realizes Leon's movements are completely different from their first fight. Leon's eye is now glowing a demonic red. My boy got a serious power-up. Herman screams in rage, realizing Leon is far stronger than he ever expected. Leon moves like a phantom, appearing behind Herman in an instant. Herman notes that Leon's fighting style is no longer the same. He's evolving mid-fight. Herman swings his sword wildly, trying to hit the blur that is now Leon. The massive energy slash carves another trench into the forest floor, hitting nothing. Herman looks on with a disappointed scowl, thinking he's won. Herman is suddenly slashed across the chest, blood spraying as Leon lands a clean hit. The demonic wolves finally arrive, swarming Herman from all sides. The cavalry is here. The wolves bite and claw at a shocked Herman, who is now the one being hunted. The aftermath of Leon's attack shows the ground littered with shattered energy fragments. One of Herman's masked knights stands in the smoky chaos, completely disoriented. The knight grunts in pain, bloodied and sweating after taking a hit. He admits he let his guard down, complaining that the dust and vapor are blinding them. Leon's aura flares as the knight realizes the air is mixed with their own hallucinogenic drugs. The masked knights stand back to back, completely lost in the smokescreen Leon created. A knight watches the wolves maul Herman, realizing they've walked right into a hunting trap. An overhead shot shows the demonic wolves absolutely shredding Herman in a bloody frenzy. Herman's face is a mask of pure shock and rage as he's being torn apart. The remaining masked knights are now being stalked by one of the demonic wolves. A demonic wolf howls, slinging blood everywhere after taking a huge bite out of someone. A close-up on the wolf's glowing red eyes shows it's enjoying the absolute carnage. The demonic wolf is identified as a scavenger, a monster that cleans up corpses. The lead knight looks on in terror, finally understanding the mess he's in. Leon appears in a flash right in front of the knight, who can't believe his eyes. The knight desperately swings his sword, trying to fight back against the inevitable. The knight accuses Leon of playing the same games he pulled on them in the forest. A demonic wolf snatches the knight from behind, lifting him clean off the ground. The knight struggles uselessly as the wolf's jaws clamp down on him. Another wolf lunges from the side, giving the knight absolutely no chance of escape. The wolf sinks its teeth into the knight's shoulder and the dude is just getting mauled. Leon blitzes the other knight while his wolf pack handles the first one. It's a coordinated beatdown. The second knight's eye widens in pure terror as he realizes he's been caught. Leon lands a brutal punch, sending the knight's head snapping back. The knight is sent flying from the impact, completely overpowered by Leon's raw strength. Leon grabs the knight by the throat, choking the life out of him mid-air. Leon stands with his wolf pack, holding the defeated knight like a trophy. He holds the knight by the head, ready to make an example out of him. The knight has the nerve to laugh and ask why Leon is doing this. My dude, are you serious? Leon just glares down at him, his glowing eyes saying everything that needs to be said. The knight asks why Leon didn't just kill him instead of beating him half to death. He realizes Leon wanted to show him something as the wolves continue their bloody feast. The knight scoffs that Leon is trying to prove he's different from other monsters. A close-up on Leon's glowing eyes shows he's about to prove him right the hard way. Herman unleashes a massive electrified slash, finally free from the wolf pack. The blast vaporizes the knight Leon was holding. Herman just executed his own man. Leon looks genuinely shocked that Herman would sacrifice his own subordinate without hesitation. Herman stands in the distance, having cleared a path by killing his own dude. Cold. Leon charges straight through the residual energy, completely enraged by Herman's move. Leon's eyes glow with absolute fury as he closes the distance to Herman. Herman grunts, bracing himself for a real one-on-one fight now that the fodder is gone. Leon and Herman clash in a massive explosion of blue energy and raw power. Herman's blade connects, sending a huge spray of blood from Leon's side. Leon is blown back by the force of the attack, hitting the ground hard. Herman stands over the corpse of a demonic wolf, having regained control of the fight. Leon looks up from the ground, bloodied and shocked by Herman's sudden counterattack. Herman starts lecturing a downed Leon about what it means to be a knight. He smirks, promising to teach Leon a painful lesson about his place in the world. Herman stands over a dead wolf, vowing to personally show Leon the difference in their levels. The scene pans out to the forest, with smoke rising as the brutal battle rages on. Tilak lets out a creepy laugh, still trying to intimidate Leonia in the wrecked cabin. The scene pans over the destroyed cabin, setting a tense atmosphere for their confrontation. Tilak's inner monologue mocks Leon's devotion, thinking he only ran because his mom begged. He sits across from Leonia, condescendingly assuming she sent her son away to his death. Tilak reaches for Leonia's hand, taunting her about being scared now that they're alone. Leonia stares back, her expression completely cold and unimpressed by his pathetic threats. She calmly states that worrying about her child is just a mother's duty. She's not breaking. Leonia turns the tables, asking Tilak to explain why he should be the one she fears. She asks what it would take to appease his anger, playing the diplomat to buy time. Tilak calls her pitiful, mocking her for falling from her past life as a noble. He gets in her face with a psychotic grin, demanding to know how she ended up like this. Tilak dismisses the fight outside, saying he doesn't care who wins between Herman and Leon. He blames her monster offspring for his resentment, trying to provoke a reaction. Tilak demands to see her unbroken spirit one last time before he shatters it. Leonia looks up with defiance, refusing to give this scumbag the satisfaction. Her eyes suddenly widen in shock as she senses something he doesn't. Tilak continues his monologue, promising that once he sees her spirit, he'll have the confidence to mercilessly break her. He reaches for her throat. Leonia's eye reflects his incoming hand, but she's not the one in danger anymore. A massive blast of green energy erupts from a ring on her finger. It's a goddamn panic button. A new character, Penslot, materializes in a flash of green light. The cavalry has arrived. Penslot looks just as surprised to be there as Tilak is to see him. He instantly moves to protect Leonia, blocking Tilak with a bladed gauntlet. Tilak is completely stunned, coughing up blood as he realizes he fucked up. Penslot decapitates Tilak in a single brutal motion. Well, that's one problem solved. The name Penslot is revealed, confirming the identity of Leonia's badass bodyguard. The scene cuts back to the forest where a massive blue light signals Herman's attack. A huge wave of blue energy rips through the trees. This is a whole other level of power. Herman is shown with a sadistic grin, clearly enjoying this fight way too much. He unleashes a massive horizontal slash, putting his full power into it. A full-blooded ogre with long hair and tusks tanks the hit. This has to be Leon's dad. Leon's dad grits his teeth, holding his ground against Herman's powerful aura blade. Herman's eyes glow red as he taunts his opponent, asking how long he plans to run. Leon's dad gets pushed back by a flurry of blue energy slashes from Herman. The ogre roars in defiance, his blue eyes glowing as he powers up. He throws a massive punch that sends a shockwave through the air. The ogre's fist collides with Herman's sword in a huge explosion of force. Herman successfully blocks the punch, the impact cratering the ground beneath them. Herman skillfully leaps back, creating distance after the powerful exchange. Leon's dad and Herman stare each other down, the battlefield crackling with energy. The ogre states that this cycle of hunting and being hunted will never end. He looks surprised, noticing a new power is slipping out of him mid-fight. Herman is impressed, admitting he's never seen this kind of power before. Herman insults the ogre, calling him a low-born half-breed. Bro, he's a full ogre. A massive rock golem appears, as Herman wonders if the ogre is now king of the forest. Herman laughs like a maniac, calling the ogre's backup pathetic. The rock golem attacks, but Herman is way too fast for the lumbering beast. Herman leaps onto the golem's arm, running up it like a ramp. The golem roars as Herman lands a clean slash across its face. Herman zips past the golem, looking for his next opening to strike. Herman slices the golem's arm clean off, moving way too fast for the big guy. Herman lands with a smug look, ready to get back to the main event. Leon's dad tanks another one of Herman's slashes, refusing to give an inch. Herman unleashes a massive downward slash with his glowing blue blade. The ogre gets hit, blood flying as he's finally wounded by the attack. Herman presses his attack, his face a mask of pure concentration and malice. A strange red targeting reticle appears over the ogre. That's a new trick. The ogre looks up, his sword now glowing with a sinister red aura. He's shown on the ground, bloodied but clearly not out of this fight yet. Leon's dad questions if Herman can even call himself a knight after all this. Herman gets pissed, asking what a monster like him would know about it. He accuses the ogre of luring him into a trap. Bro, you're the one hunting him. The ogre admits that even wounded, a knight is a different breed of warrior. Herman shows off his footwork, dodging and weaving with incredible speed. Leon's dad grits his teeth, preparing to counter Herman's relentless assault. Herman ducks under a wild swing, easily slipping past the ogre's defenses. He lands a brutal slash across the ogre's chest, drawing more blood. Herman calls him a half-breed mutt for daring to talk back. Still can't get his facts straight. The ogre mocks him for failing to land a fatal blow. The trash talk is legendary. Herman reminds the ogre of his place, calling him a mere plaything from Truvenia. Herman's eyes glow white as he powers up his aura blade for a finishing move. He unleashes a blindingly bright beam of pure blue energy. The ogre meets the blast head-on, his body silhouetted against the explosion. A close-up shows the ogre's axe glowing, ready to counter the attack. The ogre hurls his glowing axe right into Herman's energy blast. The axe collides with the beam, causing a massive, blinding explosion. Herman promises to teach him a lesson personally. This is getting intense. Herman lands a devastating stab right through the ogre's chest. Back in the present, one of the demonic wolves gets sliced in half. A blood-soaked Herman screams in absolute rage, having finally broken free. Herman's eyes are glowing red with fury. He is absolutely done playing games. Back in the flashback, the ogre punches Herman's sword, shattering the blade. Herman's gauntlet glows with power, proving he doesn't even need a full sword. The ogre stumbles back, leaving himself wide open after his big move. The scene fades to white, leaving the end of the flashback a mystery. A lone demonic wolf stands in a field of ice spikes. This is a whole new location. An old man helps a wounded blonde man, who looks like a younger village chief. The old man looks up in absolute shock at something in the distance. He sees Leon's dad holding the corpse of a knight. This is the aftermath. A close-up shows the ogre holding the dead knight by the throat like a rag doll. The knight's dying words call the ogre scum and a slave to orcs. The ogre looks down, completely unfazed by the knight's final insults. He monologues that he's already overcome the idea of a knight and can do it again. The dead knight's gauntlet twitches, still holding on to some residual energy. The knight accuses the ogre of being from Truvenia, finally connecting the dots. The ogre looks down with regret, saying he never wanted things to end this way. Herman's glowing gauntlet appears, calling the ogre insolent for his defiance. The ogre gets impaled through the head by a massive ice spike, so that's how it ended. The scene cuts to Leonia and Leon's wrecked cabin in the bright morning sun. Leonia stands inside the destroyed home, looking out at the new day. Leonia stands in the morning sun, surveying the absolute wreckage of her home. She looks up at the sky, her face a mask of exhaustion and worry for her son. Her expression hardens with cold resolve. She's clearly done being a victim. Leonia turns her gaze toward the forest, probably wondering if Leon is even alive. She looks back at the demolished cabin, the reality of Herman's attack sinking in. The camera focuses on the splintered wood, a testament to Herman's little temper tantrum. A monstrous scarred hand appears from the shadows of the destroyed home. Leon emerges from the rubble, still in his half-ogre form. My boy made it back. Leonia is completely speechless, seeing her son alive but still transformed. She immediately starts scolding him for fighting instead of running like she told him to. Leon explains he couldn't bail because Herman was about to use the villagers as bait. Leonia closes her eyes in frustration. His hero complex is going to get him killed. She asks if he was really prepared to die for the same people who disowned them. Leon defends the villagers, saying they were just scared. He's too pure for this world. Leonia looks at him, seeing his compassion is both his greatest strength and weakness. She tells him that's still not a good enough reason to throw his life away. The two stand in their ruined home, a mother and son with very different survival tactics. Leonia predicts the villagers will just try to abandon them again after all this chaos. Leon looks stunned as the harsh reality of her words finally hits him. A flashback shows Leon looking towards an old man as the sun rises. Leon continues to watch the sunrise, contemplating his place in this fucked up world. We see the old man and the younger, wounded village chief from the earlier flashback. The old man's face is a mask of pure terror, remembering the ogre's rampage. Back in the present, Leon's face is grim as he processes his mother's warning. He finally admits that his mother's cynical worldview is probably the right one. Leonia looks down, clearly not happy about being right in this situation. Leon agrees that her way is the right way to act to protect himself from now on. He changes the subject, asking if she's okay and what happened to that creep Tylok. Leonia lies, saying Tylok bailed when Herman didn't return. Smart move, can't tell him about her secret bodyguard. She touches his arm, telling him he's a wreck and needs to rest and recover. Leon agrees to get some sleep, leaning on his mother for support. Leonia watches him with a worried expression as he prepares to rest. Leon confesses he fought so he could keep living with her, not for the villagers. Leonia is visibly shaken by his heartfelt and slightly desperate confession. She starts sweating, overwhelmed by the weight of his devotion and the danger therein. The scene shifts to their wrecked cabin at night, under a full moon. Leonia gently covers her sleeping son with a blanket. Her eyes are filled with a grim determination. She is definitely planning something. She sits and watches over Leon, a silent guardian in the candlelight. A close-up shows Leon sleeping, his ogre tusks still prominent. Leonia looks down at him, her face a portrait of maternal love and sorrow. She clutches the green pendant, the emergency button that saved her from Tylock. She turns away, her mind clearly racing with plans for their escape. Meanwhile, a group of armed men gather around a massive bonfire in the woods. The village chief and his men stand by the fire, looking ready for a fight. The chief looks on with a grim expression, clearly not happy about the situation. The scene cuts to the Feron village hall, setting a more official tone. The old man from the flashback sits at his desk, looking completely stressed out. He facepalms, overwhelmed by the recent chaos. This village can't catch a break. He looks out the window at the distant bonfire, knowing more trouble is brewing. The old man's narration flashes back to the Uruk raid, showing Leon's dad looking menacing. He recalls telling the chief he didn't blame him for his son's death because of the ogre. The old man asks the younger, wounded chief if he can guarantee this chaos won't repeat. Back in the present, the old man sweats, clearly haunted by that impossible question. He remembers Leon's dad holding a dead knight, a grim reminder of the danger they attract. The old man sits in silence at his desk, stewing in his memories and the current crisis. A flash of green light suddenly engulfs him. Looks like he's got an uninvited guest. Penslot appears out of thin air, confirming the old man's worst fears about trouble arriving. The old man recognizes Leonia's bodyguard and asks if he's been spying this whole time. Penslot says this time is different. Leonia's safety is compromised by her link to a knight. The old man asks if it's because of that piece of shit witness, Tylock. Penslot calmly confirms he's already handled Tylock. Yeah, handled his head from his body. The old man's eyes widen as he realizes what handled means. The cleanup crew is efficient. He puts it together, realizing Penslot has already been to the cabin and seen Leonia. Penslot just stands there, his silence confirming everything. No need for words, my dude. The scene cuts back to the quiet, wrecked cabin in the dead of night. Leon is passed out under a blanket, completely oblivious to his mom's scheming. Leonia sits at a table, writing a letter by candlelight as the narration questions her decision. She's writing a farewell letter, with the panic button pendant resting on the paper. Leonia prepares to leave while her son sleeps, making a choice for both of them. She cries silently as she writes, knowing she's about to break her son's heart to save him.